Deep within the forest, a fierce clash unfolded among the towering trees. With a swift gesture, she cast a spell and followed it by landing a powerful punch on the monster. Meanwhile, the man pondered how everyone summoned somehow ended up in this very city. Until recently, even he found it hard to believe. Among them was a girl who had simply been an ordinary student. Approaching the solitary house nestled deep within the forest, he rapped firmly on the door and called out for the owner in a clear, persistent voice. In this world stands a unique house known as Delsky Fahrenheit. Within its walls, wizards make their living, taking on all kinds of tasks and accepting a wide variety of jobs, just as they do everywhere else. As she opened the door, she greeted the young man waiting on the doorstep. His name was Keenan, and with a playful smile, he remarked that morning had long since slipped away. Upon entering, Keenan immediately noticed chaos had once again taken over Dell's home. Dell simply waved off the observation, grumbling about being incredibly busy and unconcerned with other people's comments. As their conversation continued, he reminded himself that Keenan was, in truth, an exceptionally decent person. Just then, Dells caught sight of a girl standing behind Keenan. Cautious as ever, he instinctively tried to steer clear of any situation that seemed risky. In an instant, a sense of danger washed over him, prompting a swift motion as he pushed Ken out of harm's way. The moment had come to close the door and firmly order them to leave this place at once. Confusion washed over Ken as he struggled to grasp Dell's motivations and pressed him for answers. Dell merely remarked that he was happy for Ken for finally meeting a girl. Still, he insisted that bringing her home to introduce to everyone had been a mistake. Without hesitation, Keenan dismissed Dell's words and firmly stated that the girl in question held no place in his heart. This was not a subject he cared to discuss. Kenan mentioned to Dell that, just like the previous days, he had nowhere to go this morning. The monotony of his routine had begun to wear on him. Upon arriving in this world, Dell made his home in Japan. Forced to relocate, he faced numerous obstacles along the way, eventually settling into a quiet and solitary existence, living the typical life of a recluse. After a long moment of hesitation, the door finally swung open. He welcomed him back inside. The true purpose of his visit remained unclear. He mentioned that the issue involved the girl standing just behind him, yet it was clear from her expression that trouble had found her. To prove her point, she pulled back her hood. Her dark hair stood out, a rare sight in this world. Ultimately, Deltz agreed to take her on as his apprentice, though his enthusiasm for the arrangement was noticeably lacking. Welcome to the performance. She expressed her relief that Haruna had finally regained consciousness. Meanwhile, everyone else had already familiarized themselves with their own stats and skills. The world still seemed confusing to Haruna. She had no idea what indicators or abilities Toka was talking about. Chinatu. The explanation came easily. Every classmate was present, drawn together as they prepared for their club activities. Without warning, they all found themselves transported to this place, landing right at the heart of the summoning. Worry quickly spread among the girls, especially since Haruna had yet to recover. She explained that she had agreed to fill in for someone at the football club, but during warm-ups, her vision suddenly blurred and everything seemed to swirl before her eyes. She mentioned that everything was fine now since Haruna had finally woken up. Intense curiosity shone in her eyes as she asked about Haruna's condition, though Haruna herself still had no idea what any of it meant. A man dressed in peculiar clothes approached and offered to explain everything, introducing himself as Joseph, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Adelheid. The man explained that their summoning was no accident. Each of them possessed an extraordinary potential for heroism. This world teemed with dangerous magical creatures, and only they held the strength to defeat them, and eventually face the Dark Lord himself. Joseph spoke with unwavering confidence about the remarkable fate awaiting them. Joseph pointed out that everyone had already demonstrated their unique talents. For example, Toka embarked on her journey in this world as a combat class, starting at level 5. The other members of the group also began above level 4 and possessed skills that commanded admiration. Those who entered this world already possessing the 4th level held remarkable potential for greatness. Without a doubt, such individuals could be recognized as true heroes. Haruna's classmates openly admired her. Their curiosity piqued about which profession and traits she had received. Her reputation preceded her. Wherever she set her sights, impressive success always seemed to follow. Matsu warned Haruna to stay cautious, noting that the whole scene felt eerily similar to a cult, with the group behaving as if they were under a spell. Haruna nodded in agreement. The unnatural atmosphere weighed heavily on her, filling her with a sense of unease. Placing a steady hand on Haruna's shoulder, she urged him to showcase his skills without delay. With a hint of pride, she mentioned beginning her journey in the new world already at level 5. Curiosity sparkled within her as she pondered the unique qualities that set Haruna apart. Long before arriving in this new world, remarkable achievements across various fields had already set her apart as someone destined for greatness. As a result, she received the Divine Stone, a powerful artifact designed to reveal her true abilities. Anticipation filled the air as everyone waited for Haruna to reveal her abilities. She reached for the Divine Stone, and the moment it touched her hands, it glowed with a dazzling brilliance. Encouragement sparked in her voice as she urged Haruna to hurry, her own eagerness to learn her stats shining through. Haruna, catching her excitement, promised not to waste any time. Traits began to emerge across the surface of the stone, capturing everyone's attention and filling them with utter astonishment at what unfolded before their eyes. Haruna began to ask something, yet Del suddenly cut her off, halting the conversation in its tracks. Scratching the back of his head, he nodded in agreement and assured everyone that he understood perfectly. She failed to grasp his meaning since Del had overlooked the most crucial part of her story. His thoughts drifted elsewhere, leaving him deaf to everything of importance she had said. To none of her questions did Del offer a response. He only muttered that he would have to clean up after old Joseph Smith once again. The situation had become clear. It was now obvious that Haruna was not as strong as everyone had expected. Her classmates started mocking her, and soon their ridicule turned into contempt. Joseph, too, felt deeply disappointed in her, though he could not deny that he shared some of the blame since he was the one who had asked the others to do the dirty work for him. Dispatching Haruna to Del had been his attempt at self-preservation, but now the weight of that choice came crashing down as he confronted the aftermath. Observing the surprise on Cannon's face, he wondered aloud if he had made a mistake. Cannon assured him that everything was exactly as Del had described. He mentioned that people most likely approached the group leader first, but she would immediately direct everyone to him. Del inquired if Kennel truly intended to follow her orders without question. Kennel offered no response, seemingly choosing to disregard the question entirely. He described the leader of their group as an absolute terror, someone whose orders he simply couldn't defy. Del's realization struck as the squad leader and her team poured their efforts into enhancing the hero's abilities, while Keenan struggled desperately to find a solution to the crisis. The notion of transporting an entire class to another world seemed utterly mad to Del, almost beyond belief. Driven by doubt, he asked Haruna to reveal her divine sphere so he could examine its properties for himself. Anticipation lit up Haruna and the others as they paused, certain Del had agreed to their request. Instead, he calmly urged them to take their time and carefully consider all options before making a decision. He clarified that he had never promised to become her mentor, but was simply interested in learning more about her unique traits. At that moment, Haruna stepped forward and placed the goddess stone into Della's hand, gently closing her fingers around it. A person can only observe their own attributes. The goddess stone, a mystical artifact, reveals the holder's stats and traits. Everyone brought into this world receives such a stone. It displays their unique features and chosen profession. With entry, a divine blessing is bestowed upon each newcomer. Daira found herself stunned, however, by just how insignificant Haruna's blessing seemed. Bruno possessed the rank of a first-level mage. Gifted with no unique talents, every attribute besides magic rested at a mere 1 point. Disbelief washed over her as the situation unfolded before her eyes, something she had never considered possible. Her abilities fell short, lagging behind even those of the average village girl. According to the canon, Joseph shared this belief. Del had resigned herself to the idea that her talents amounted to nothing at all. If she were to become his apprentice, what would she hope to achieve? As an ordinary village girl, perhaps she longs to earn the respect of those around her, or, as Joseph suggested, she may wish to take part in the battle against the Dark Lord. Teased relentlessly by his friends, Haruna harbors a quiet yearning for revenge. Each mocking word etches itself into his memory, fueling a determination to even the score one day. Her response revealed a chilling desire to grind their bones into dust. Bells found herself stunned by such an answer. Excitement surged within her at the thought of what would unfold upon her return. She needed to appear as someone who had surpassed them all. The thought crossed her mind that all would be perfect if they gave chase and pleaded for a rematch. Deep inside, a quiet certainty grew. This was exactly how events would unfold. According to her, revenge had become her chosen path, yet for Haruna, the whole affair seemed little more than a game. In Haruna's eyes, it was a fleeting amusement rather than any true calling. From childhood, her heart burned with the desire to conquer formidable opponents. Though she remained almost unknown, she tirelessly entered competition after competition, determined to test her strength. In each of these competitions, her sudden bursts of extraordinary skill left everyone astonished. In her previous world, fame and popularity followed her everywhere, yet recently, her life had become overshadowed by a single lingering disappointment. For her, this was a perfect opportunity. Now, everyone who had ever mocked her uniqueness, everyone except her friend Chinatu, would finally face the full force of her revenge. She strikes them relentlessly until bruises bloom on their skin, then laughs loudly at their misery. Understanding Haruna's true desires, Del recognized the intriguing nature of her personality. Haruna, aglow with happiness, imagined that Del was about to invite her to become his apprentice. To everyone's surprise, Wills firmly declared he had no intention of taking Haruna on as his apprentice. Both Haruna and Keenan were caught off guard by his unexpected words. He admitted to himself that Haruna possessed a certain ambition and spark that was hard to ignore. Still, none of it offered him any benefit at the moment. His attention was already claimed by other matters. Haruna attempted to reassure him of her willingness to do whatever was needed, only for Keenan to interrupt her. Del should have seen the girl's expression as she spoke such things. Still, Haruna needed to learn that, by evening, one should avoid making promises they can't keep. Del firmly grasped Keenan's head and demanded to know what nonsense he had just blurted out. Without waiting for them to finish, she interjected, confidently declaring her ability to handle all the household tasks on her own: cleaning, doing the laundry, running errands, and, most notably, cooking. Her culinary creations had always brought happiness to her brothers from the other world. Haruna advised her to think carefully about such an idea. With a teacher like Del, she would only end up ruining her life, Haruna added. Hearing this, Del tightened his fists even more and angrily called her a fool. Haruna received praise for her impressive self-presentation, yet he made it clear that his training regimen was notoriously strict. Additionally, with Haruna agreeing to handle all the household chores, her schedule would be packed so tightly that she would scarcely find a moment for herself. Haruna agreed, though her decision had been made long ago. Determined to reach her goal, she stood ready to give her all. No matter what obstacles appeared in her path, Haruna faced them with unwavering determination. Her unbreakable spirit propelled her forward, embodying her steadfast resolve to always keep moving ahead. She firmly believes that dedication and hard work will inevitably lead to fame. A single thought flickered through her mind. For an instant, something unfathomable seemed to pass through her vacant, bottomless eyes, but in the next moment her gaze and expression returned to their usual calm. Curiosity prompted Della to ask Haruna how often she spoke in such an innocent manner. With a gentle smile, Haruna admitted it happened quite a lot, explaining that she truly was a naive fool at heart. Her boundless optimism drew a sly smile from Della, who found it oddly charming. Del expressed his complete satisfaction with the arrangement, agreeing without hesitation to take Haruna on as his student. The swift acceptance caught Haruna entirely off guard, for she had not expected him to consent to her proposal so readily. Del gently brushed his hand over Haruna's head, signaling his approval of her answer. However, his expression quickly shifted as he retracted his words, cautioning her to prepare for a week of intense effort. He assured her that he would be closely observing her progress throughout the entire time. Additionally, he reminded Haruna that the training would not only help her grow stronger, but might one day allow her to surpass her classmates. Haruna brimmed with determination and offered her help with the household chores. He agreed to let her stay, though only for a limited period. If her drive to surpass her classmates faded within a week, Haruna would leave for the city, where her appearance and good health would make finding work an easy task. At that moment, he asked Del to be a little less mysterious, only to be rewarded with a swift punch to the face. Today brought many discoveries about Canon, revealing not only unexpected details, but also Canon's true opinion of him. She requested the chance to introduce herself to Dels once more. Dels saw no reason to refuse. Although his living conditions could certainly be better, at least now they will have the chance to see each other frequently. Dels also needs a proper introduction. The man introduced himself as Dels Fahrenheit. Exceptionally skilled in his craft, he shared the same magical talents as Haruna. She was free to address him however she liked, and after a moment's thought, she chose to call him Master. The decision filled her with quiet delight. Now it was her turn to introduce herself. She was Katsuragi Haruna. The Haru in her name signified a spirit that constantly seeks out new experiences, unafraid to venture into the unknown or to experiment boldly. Gel inquired about the extent of Karuna's determination. She assured him that she was giving everything she had. She assured Hel that she would give her utmost effort. In response, Hel mentioned that although he wished to start her training right away, he first needed to assign her a room. One had previously belonged to a resident who stayed for free, so Haruni would need to clean it before she could move in. She understood, but her path to the room was blocked by towering stacks of books. Tidying up would be essential before she could settle in. He decided to start calling her simply Haru, explaining that her full name was a bit too challenging for him to pronounce. Haruna offered no objection. With a mountain of reports still waiting, Della prepared to dive back into work. The moment had finally arrived. Del quickly realized just how skilled Haruna was at managing the household. Although he lent a hand here and there, within just half a day, the entire place gleamed with cleanliness. Perhaps she wouldn't make an ideal apprentice, but as a homemaker, Haruna truly stood out as exceptional. After stepping out of the shower, he expressed his gratitude to Del for the warm hospitality. At that moment, Del convinced himself that he felt nothing for Haruna, believing that any hint of affection might tarnish the reputation of the entire team. Still, hiding his growing interest in her proved to be a challenge. Anne announced her intention to prepare lunch and asked Della where he kept his groceries. He explained that he mostly relied on ready-made meals. Haru, sounding disapproving, remarked that such habits were unacceptable and promised to buy groceries herself tomorrow before training. Amazement swept over him as he realized that she alone had prepared every dish spread across the table. Thanks to Haruna, memories of rice, eggs, and lard, simple comforts from his own world, came flooding back. After tasting the food, Bell found himself genuinely delighted by its flavor. With gentle reproach, Haruna reminded him not to snatch food from the table before it was time. Ragi Haruna found herself transported to a mysterious new realm, swept away alongside her classmates into the magical kingdom of Adelheid. Unlike her peers, who all possessed extraordinary abilities, she retained only the modest skills of a village girl. The kingdom's rulers decided to entrust her to Del, making her his apprentice and placing her future in his care. Del admitted to Haruna that, in truth, he hadn't anticipated just how skilled she would become at managing a household. He had hoped to share stories of his training while they ate, but by the time he was ready, Haruna had already finished her meal. An eager desire burned within her to resume the practical part of training as soon as possible. However, Bells requested a moment of peace to finish his meal, suggesting that Haruna review the theory in the meantime. Haruna quickly discovered that the training was nothing like she had imagined. She had pictured rigorous exercises meant to strengthen both body and spirit. Instead, Bells simply waved the idea away, insisting that as a sorceress, she had no need for such physical drills. Still, Haruna persisted, expressing her desire to become a warrior and even asking if it was possible to change her profession. Bells reacted with wounded pride, remarking that such a request was an insult to her magical mentor. Realizing her mistake, Haruna immediately apologized for her thoughtless words. For this reason, it became crucial for Haruni to master every bit of knowledge related to special abilities. Alongside his new body, a divine blessing bestows further gifts upon him. The language of this world unfolds before his mind, now fully understandable, and he gains the ability to survey his own attributes. Profession, core traits, and unique skills reveal themselves in detail. However, with every level reached, the path to the next grows steeper. Advancement at higher ranks can take months of effort. Growth demands vanquishing monsters, a challenge that proves far from easy. Additionally, the level of one's profession can also be raised separately, but the method for doing so remains a mystery. Mastery grows from hands-on experience in each distinct skill. Skills can be selected manually, while the available skill slots depend on one's current profession level. Notably, skills that can be memorized regardless of profession are marked with an empty diamond. In contrast, abilities tied to a specific profession appear with a black diamond next to their names. For instance, a mage's water and fire magic, along with other elemental spells, all carry this mark. To raise a profession's rank, related skills must first be improved. Meanwhile, increasing the level of a specific skill requires accumulating enough experience in that exact area. Swordsmanship evolves through dedicated training and sparring, while culinary ability advances with each dish prepared. The moment Haruna heard the news, a storm of anger roiled within. Del quickly realized that theory was Haruna's one true Achilles heel. Haruna consistently landed at the bottom of the test rankings, yet she found real joy in staying active. Hell quietly observed her and concluded that this was hardly a quality worth boasting about. News of the afternoon's hands-on training brought a bright spark to Haruna's face. Once the dishes were washed and Haruna had changed into the athletic outfit she had brought from the palace, she made her way toward the garden, eager for the long-awaited hands-on training to finally begin. Haruna set off for her lessons, soon noticing that she had already ventured a considerable distance from home. Curious about the exact location of Del's garden, Haruna soon learned that the entire area surrounding them was, in fact, the garden itself. It turned out they were far from the castle, with no other houses nearby. A magical barrier encircled the territory, making entry difficult and preventing any sound from escaping. The place was truly perfect for training. At last, they arrived. Del revealed that, in this very garden, Haruna would learn new skills. The news took Haruna completely by surprise. Del pointed out that Haruna would mainly focus on leveling up her skills, since she preferred hands-on experience over theory. Haruna's delight was obvious, and she happily admitted this was true, warmly thanking Del for the opportunity. With a playful grin, Del added that she had been utterly at a loss, but fortunately, Haruna's pleas had reached her. Shifting the conversation to the heart of the matter, Del asks Haruna which martial arts style would suit her best. Declaring absolute confidence in her martial arts abilities, Haruna would, without a second thought, choose hand-to-hand combat. Del paused to consider, and soon concluded that she could forgo training in hand-to-hand combat. This unexpected decision caught Haruna off guard. Curiosity sparked in her voice as she wondered aloud if one could simply drop a skill, especially when there were only 2 available slots for abilities. Furthermore, she expressed concern that choosing a skill unrelated to magic might hinder future opportunities. I explained that Haruna should reserve 1 slot for a magical skill as her first priority. Still, since martial arts are already her strength, focusing on further honing those abilities would serve her well. In an instant, understanding dawned on her. She swiftly opened her character window and assigned the hand-to-hand combat skill to an available slot. She wants them to put her skill to the test and see it in action. Complete focus was required as she carefully descended deeper into her consciousness. It is said that genuine experience serves as the most effective tool for sharpening skills. Aimless practice yields little progress, for true ability cannot be faked. Skill levels cannot be raised in an instant. Unarmed combat follows the very same principles as sword fighting. Through focused training and determined repetition of each strike, one can certainly achieve meaningful progress. At the very first strike, an information panel flashed before Haruna's eyes, prompting her to immediately summon the teacher. She informed Dell that her close combat skills had reached the second level. Despite her confident announcement, Dell remained unconvinced. He asked Haruna to hand over her divine stone, curious to take a closer look at her current abilities. As he examined it, he discovered a unique trait with two distinct elements. Her abilities had truly advanced to the next level. No matter how you looked at it, the speed of her progress was remarkable. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked Haruna how she had managed it. Yet even Haruna seemed puzzled. She had simply thrown a regular kick, nothing more. Disbelief washed over her as she listened. Typically, advancing one's skill demanded countless sparring sessions or real combat experience, but never could progress be achieved through a simple practice swing. Surprise flickered through me. Was this truly how the training had been planned from the start? This outlook reached beyond martial arts. She clearly believed that victory in a real battle was the only acceptable outcome. Determined to claim victory, Haruna pours her heart and soul into every effort. Defeat marks her path, yet this setback fuels Haruni's determination. With renewed resolve for vengeance, she grows stronger with every attempt. In the end, a wonderful sense of pleasure washed over me. Without giving it your all, none of this will matter. Witnessing this side of Haruna left a strong impression on me. Each day she pushes herself to the brink, never sparing her energy or her nerves. Alongside her improved hand-to-hand combat skills, notable growth had also taken place in her supporting attributes: endurance, strength, and overall vitality. Astonishment filled me as I witnessed such incredibly swift progress. It became clear that the week could have ended much sooner. She announced her plan to train until dinner, then, after a brief rest, to resume her practice. From this moment on, he would formally acknowledge her as his student. Disbelief washed over her as a wave of excitement surged within. He mentioned that while she practiced, he would rest in the shade and recover his strength. Meanwhile, Haruna tirelessly continued her training. After several intense hours, Haruna's training finally drew to a close. His gaze lingered on Haruna's divine stone, genuine admiration flickering in his eyes. The glimpse he caught revealed a truly fascinating character in her. Curious about her experience, he asked if she enjoyed the training sessions. Haruna admitted that every time she began to move, an uncontrollable fury surged within her. The intensity of the training fills her with the sense that she could move mountains. An extraordinary rush of exhilaration surges within her. The sacred stone bore an inscription. Her close combat level had risen to 17. Amazement filled Delsa as she realized she had advanced so far in just half a day. Climbing so many levels demands relentless battles from morning until night, wiping out waves of monsters again and again, and even then, there is no certainty that such progress can be achieved. Once more, healing magic surged gently over Haruna as he cast the spell, leaving him quietly marveling at how fascinating this power truly was. With her body feeling astonishingly light after the healing, Haruna sensed a newfound vitality coursing through her. Deciding it was best to end their training for the day, Belle suggested they head back. Once back home, she would still need to tidy herself up and eat before Belle would officially declare her his apprentice. Haruna could hardly believe how swiftly and easily everything had unfolded. The shortened probation suited her, yet the whole process felt surprisingly casual. Belle, however, simply smiled and revealed that he had only been joking. True acceptance as an apprentice required more than just words. Recognition alone would never be enough. Determined to take advantage of a unique skill within his reach, he called forth a status window before Haruna. A window appeared before Dell's, offering her the choice to become an apprentice. The guide clarified that this wasn't exactly a farewell gift. Rather, it served as a kind of initiation ritual for a future student. The skill resembled a contract in some ways, but even if she refused, he intended to teach her regardless. Addressing Haruna, Dells calmly asked what she would decide. Without a moment's hesitation, Runo made her choice clear. She agreed without any reservations. Responding to Dell, Runo gently pointed out that there was no need for such a serious expression. Perhaps she seemed somewhat naive, yet Dell's kind heart was unmistakable from the very start. The particular word she chose caught his attention, and he quickly assured her that she was nothing like a dog, in fact, quite the opposite. Haruna smiled and replied that she saw herself more as a cat. As life unfolded and experience accumulated, one first mastered fundamental skills before eventually embracing new talents. In this way, Dell acquired the abilities of both teacher and student. In his youth, he never imagined that such a gift would come to serve him. Yet that day arrived, stirring something deep within his heart. Gazing at the girl before him, Dell now recognized his own apprentice. Preparing to wash up, she glanced at Dell's and asked if he would like to scrub her back. At that moment, Dell's realized he might have chosen the wrong person as his apprentice. Haruna expressed her desire to understand the world more deeply and saw no point in wasting time soaking in a bath. She invited Dell's to join her instead. He explained that their conversation would take place through the window while he remained outside. As long as Haruna maintained her composure, everything would proceed smoothly. A gentle smile spread across her face as she remarked that everything had unfolded exactly as she had anticipated. Dell, caught off guard, asked her what she meant. She explained that she was merely testing him, wanting to be certain he would make a reliable mentor. For Della, anything related to cleaning was nothing short of a disaster, which is exactly why she decided to put him to the test. The new understanding fit him perfectly. Now, after their conversation, Dell's finally realized the reason behind her behavior. She began recounting the history of this world. However, Haruna quickly pointed out her desire to regain her strength first, and suggested they instead talk about things she wanted to do, something fun and interesting. Dell was taken aback by her insistence on voicing her wishes even now, yet he chose not to press the issue. Allow me to share the tale of Mudji Gav, a goblin who yearned for adventure. Guided by curiosity and daring, Mudji set forth beyond the safety of his tribe, venturing into uncharted forests and shadowed valleys. Stories of hidden treasures and forgotten legends fueled his journey, drawing him ever deeper into the unknown. Thus ended Haruna's first day of training. As a new day of training dawned, Dell inquired whether Haruna had managed to go through the book he had handed her the previous day. Haruna, with confidence in her tone, assured him she had already finished reading it. She noted how effortlessly the book flowed, filled with charming characters and a storyline that unfolded with clear simplicity. The sight of the goblin adventurer using dark magic and music to rescue his fiancée's child moved her deeply. Still, he pointed out that this was not the same book he had given her. After announcing their decision, they declared that from this day forward, Haruna would begin her magic training. Starting from scratch became inevitable. The book Haruna had been reading explained that magic breaks down into several categories, with each skill requiring separate study and careful memorization. For water, air, earth, lightning, light, and darkness. When asked which type of magic she wished to pursue, Haruna answered without hesitation. The choice seemed perfectly clear to her. With unwavering confidence, Haruna declared her intention to master the art of dark magic. To surpass her classmates, she relied on cunning strategies and clever tricks. Dark magic, she noted, weakens opponents and can conjure a veil of smoke to obscure the battlefield. In her eyes, no other magic held such promise. Yesterday, she had carefully examined the list of abilities but found no trace of dark magic among them. Despite this, Bells insisted he had definitely seen that type of magic on the skills roster. With a hint of doubt lingering, Haruna decided to check once more. Within moments, her suspicions were confirmed. Magic of darkness had indeed appeared among the list of abilities. Dell advised her to select it just as she had done before. Each time Haruna summoned the power of dark magic, her skill level climbed higher. With abilities like hers, surpassing her entire class seemed inevitable, just as she had planned. Dell kept his thoughts to himself, though he knew her mana reserves would barely last through a single volume. Without delay, she suggested heading straight to the garden to test out her new spell. On the training ground, Dell explained that, just as mentioned before, dark magic not only weakens an opponent's abilities, but also grants control over bodies and gravity. Mastery of this art requires dealing with a power both insidious and demanding. According to her, This magic allowed effortless control over an enemy as long as their actions remained restricted. Spells that weaken both mind and body held remarkable power. At first, he suggested that Haruna try a basic dark spell known as Adva. With it, she would be able to conjure a small, poisonous orb. All her focus converges on her right hand as she channels energy into it, envisioning the movement as if kneading dough, tenderly as one might for a beloved puppy. For the first time, he manages to harness the power of this spell. A skeptical smile played on her lips in response to the attempt. Her gaze fell upon this paper, revealing a familiar sight, a tiny bead of poisonous liquid forming precisely on the fabric. Haruna received reassurance that, for a first attempt, her effort was actually quite decent. At the very least, she had managed to accomplish something. Resolute, she attempted once more, but the outcome remained unchanged. Turning her attention to Del, Haruna inquired why she could not sense any energy at all. Del explained to Haruna that her mana was completely depleted. Stunned and uncertain, Haruna struggled to accept this and had no idea what step to take next. Del then suggested they head home and continue with their theoretical studies. The suggestion left Haruna feeling anything but pleased. Haruna possesses only a small reserve of mana, and her magical abilities are limited. Carelessly casting spells is not an option, making the traditional path of leveling up through battles less than ideal. At this stage, theory is crucial for her if she wants to progress efficiently. Unaware of the source, a deep irritation gnawed at her, stirring restlessly within. The reminder of her true goal, to seek revenge against her classmates, rekindled Haruna's spirits. Energized by this thought, she nodded with renewed determination and promised to work even harder to achieve it. The third day of training dawned with a new destination in mind. This time, the group set out for the magical kingdom of Adelgate, making their way toward the city of Diana, which sprawled gracefully around the grand castle at its center. Del strolled leisurely in a wide circle around him, his steps unhurried and deliberate. While Haruna restored the monocles, her determination shone through intense martial arts training and a deep dive into theoretical studies. At this relentless pace, she stood poised to ascend to the next level of her craft far sooner than he had anticipated. A decision formed in his mind to ask Del about it. The teacher-student skill allowed him to check her stats at any time. Curiosity also tugged at Haruna, eager to learn just how powerful her own mentor truly was. Mulling over whether Haruna truly required him to ask for permission every time he wished to view her stats, he recalled that the teacher and student abilities extended far beyond just that. Yet these thoughts quickly faded into the background, for they had finally arrived at their destination. The group arrived at a weapon shop called Grievous. Locals claim that every item here boasts top-tier quality, crafted by a level 5 blacksmith. Yet because of his stubborn ways, the shop rarely sees many customers. Despite its reputation, stepping inside is surprisingly easy. The shop offers an impressive array of weapons, armor, and clothing, along with the option to modify and enhance your gear. Each visit promises to elevate your wardrobe beyond anything you previously owned. At the counter stood Del, Anaida's well-known familiar. She greeted him, noting it had been quite some time since they last met. Her attention quickly shifted to Haruna standing nearby. Raising her voice for the entire shop to hear, she announced that Del had arrived with this girl. Despite Del's attempts to reassure her, Anita still couldn't grasp what he saw in Haruna. The girl was sweet and pleasant enough, yet Anita struggled to understand what had drawn his attention so deeply. Del politely requested that Anita steer clear of trouble and watch what she said. Haru then introduced herself, revealing she was Del's student. She explained that she studied magic under his guidance and expressed how glad she was to meet Anita. The news that Del had taken on an apprentice seemed almost unbelievable, hinting that perhaps he had finally decided to settle down. Danny sent Anita out to fetch some gasoline. Apologizing for her jokes, she promised to call him right away. Stepping out from behind the screen, the man paused in surprise to find Del had finally regained his composure. Del wasted no time and warned him sternly not to try any tricks. Gan rolled up his sleeves and set to work. He announced that today they would be crafting equipment for Del's apprentice. Eager to make a unique request, Del turned to Gan for guidance. Gan assured him that fulfilling the request would not pose any difficulties. Given that the order came directly from Dell, the task would require considerable effort, but Gon expected a favor in return. Anita was asked to choose some clothes for Haruna, knowing she had almost nothing of her own, and hoping to find something that would truly delight her. She gave her word that she would take care of her with the utmost devotion. Dell's request caught him off guard. The man admitted that he had been using a similar item for quite some time. Still, uncertainty lingered. Was this truly meant for Harun? She replied that she could handle it on her own. Gon's reaction to her words revealed a silent astonishment, the impact evident in his eyes. Whether an ordinary child magician could manage this remained uncertain. Dell assured him that everything was under control. Hidden strength resided within her, far greater than anyone might expect at first glance. After these words, Dell handed the materials to Gensum. He remarked that, as usual, Dells was talking nonsense. Dellis requested a favor. Agreeing, he admitted he couldn't refuse since it involved a student. Still, he warned that the materials on hand wouldn't be enough. More would have to be gathered. Agreement settled between them. A plan formed to head for the guild and accept a monster hunting quest. Haruna would gather the required materials on his behalf. The method Dell chose to teach Haruna caught Gain off guard, leaving him quietly amazed. Wells turned toward Anita and Haruna, surprise flickering in his eyes. Across the room, Vanita rested on the table, quietly muttering to herself. Arjuna realized that her friendliness had crossed a line, perhaps becoming a bit excessive. She haggled relentlessly until the very end. Dell asked Haruna to place her belongings on his back, but she firmly refused to let her teacher carry her purchases. Haruna reassured everyone that there was nothing to worry about, for his backpack was far from ordinary. Though it appeared to be just an average bag on the outside, it concealed magical powers within. The storage space inside seemed limitless, able to hold the contents of an entire store with ease. Moreover, everything placed inside remained untouched by the passage of time or the constraints of space, so concerns about capacity or preservation simply vanished. A suggestion arose to use this pouch in place of a refrigerator. Tell responded that they were actually on their way to the guild. Runa turned to Tell with curiosity, asking if the guild here resembled those in games, with adventures, battles, and quests woven into their daily lives. She confirmed it with a calm nod. Today's training would pit them against a real monster, turning the exercise into an actual battle. The Ventura Guild handles a wide array of tasks and typically maintains a branch in every country. Every task comes with a specific deadline. Missing it requires the person responsible to pay a penalty. Dell was asked what her first creation would be. She explained that most novices tremble with fear when faced with their first challenge, slaying a monster. Yet, Haruna stood apart from the rest, unfazed and remarkably different. She replied with determination, insisting she wanted to confront the monsters as soon as possible. The memory of her troubled mind resurfaced instantly in Dell's thoughts. At last, a suitable mission presented itself, one where the monsters would have no opportunity to escape. The pair approached the registration table. The group approached old Yal, who sat quietly at his table, and asked if it was acceptable for the guildmaster to nap so openly at work. Jal welcomed Dells, his surprise clear at seeing him return, and all the more so because he had brought along a beautiful girl. She replied calmly that he was mistaken. She was nothing more than his student. Dells found himself quietly marveling at how peculiar the people in this city seemed. Jal received a request to announce the challenge he had selected. With a note of caution, he warned that the conditions would be truly Spartan, questioning whether Garuna could handle what lay ahead. She replied that she only had the first level, leaving Joel genuinely surprised. Uncertainty filled him as he realized this task had been intended for those of the third rank. The mission: eliminate the lair of the Ashen Kobolds. The opponents consist of third-level monsters resembling wolves, a kobold subspecies. They have taken over an abandoned mine. Far more dangerous than ordinary kobolds, these creatures make it advisable to gather a capable team to complete the task. He explained that, although they had already agreed to the task, old Jal did everything in his power to hold them back. Dells assured her that it was only natural for Jal to be anxious, since Haruna was the same age as his granddaughter. On top of that, a fine was required for completing this quest. There is even a record for finishing such tasks at the first level, though it is likely that most attempts were made as part of a group. Dells was asked if this was the usual course of events. As soon as the contract was signed, he headed straight home, choosing not to embark on the mission. Restless hands itched to unleash fury upon the wicked monsters. As the group mapped out their plan, they discovered that the mine they needed lay on the far side of the mountain. Taking stock of their preparations, they realized Haruna's equipment needed some attention. Dell pointed out that Bump had once used this very room, making it the perfect opportunity to put his old belongings to use. Lifting the hatch concealed in the floor, he revealed a chest hidden beneath. Dell informed Haruna that she was welcome to use any of the items inside if she wished. Wearing something that doesn't belong to her goes against her principles. Explained that there was no issue. This robe served only for training purposes, and thanks to an enchantment placed on it, the fabric adjusted itself to fit whoever put it on. Her response was calm. In that case, everything suited her just fine. Dells reassured her with quiet confidence, insisting there was no need to worry. It would be best for Haruna to get ready first, and then they could continue on their way. Dell methodically packed the remnants of their supplies into a bag, tucking away recovery potions and various odds and ends. Meanwhile, Haruna had already returned. Unsure of the proper way to wear the robe, she turned to Dell for guidance. Not a hint of shame touched her. Dell explained what needed to be done, and without hesitation, Haruna went off to change her clothes once more. At last, for a brief moment, Haruna stood completely prepared. Carefully, she took stock of her gear. Inside her bag rested potions for restoring both health and mana, a sturdy torch, and a length of rope, all the essential tools every adventurer ought to carry. A few more items remained that could be useful for X. The purpose behind his actions escaped Haruna's understanding. She explained that after the nest was destroyed, Haruna would need to mine ore or stones like this one. According to her, these stones were essential for crafting gear for Haruna. Their deep midnight black hue left the girl deeply impressed. With the stone resting in her hands, Haruna became acutely aware of its weight. She promised she could retrieve those stones from the depths of the mine, but only after Haruna dealt with the monsters, setting off toward the location of the mission. Along the way, she stumbled upon a pool of blood, which made her pause and wonder how much farther she still had to travel before reaching her destination. Climbing up into the branches, she began to observe everything from above. Among the ashen cobblestones, this one stands apart. Unlike others of its kind, it approaches humans with pronounced caution. Highly aggressive by nature, such creatures typically move in packs, seamlessly closing in on their prey. When left alone, however, it soon drifts back to its habitual behavior. The knowledge Haruna possessed about them could prove useful. Yet, if Kobold found himself alone now, an opportunity opened for her to try and deal with him on her own. With a swift leap from the tree, she landed and immediately lunged at him. Her objective centered on swiftly neutralizing the ashen intruder. As always, the rules proved useless. Taking a life came all too easily to her. Many years ago, within the memories of Haruna, during kendo practice at the club, Haruna Matsumet moved with focused determination. Surprise flickered in her eyes when Haruna resumed training just the day after the competition. Memories of her formidable and determined rival surfaced, casting a brief shadow. Yet, with Chinatsu's steady support, calm was restored and victory became possible. After the match, her rival, who had seen things differently, approached Haruna and confessed her gratitude for the rules of kendo. If this had been a true sword fight, she admitted without hesitation, she would have already lost her life. Although she only took up kendo in middle school, she has already managed to claim victory at a tournament in Japan. She told Haruna that her unwavering determination remained as impressive as ever. Having only started kendo in middle school herself, she could never quite match those skills. No matter which sport Haruna tried, success seemed to come naturally and swiftly. She admitted that there were many things in which she simply could not compete with Chinatsu. The thrill of defeating her rivals fills her with genuine satisfaction. This is why she puts in so much effort. Haruna severed the tail of the stone-gray beast, intending to keep it as proof of its defeat. The path to the mine stretched only a short distance. Haruna swiftly eliminated several more ash-gray stone creatures. Choosing to forgo the torch, she melted into the shadows. Knowing its light would only draw unwanted attention, Venturing deeper into the mine, she mulled over the evening's plans and reminded herself that dinner still needed to be prepared. Her intention was to return home before the sun dipped below the horizon. Take note, someone deliberately damaged the rails in this area. Haruna tried to recall what tasks awaited her once the trial came to an end. A new obstacle emerged. Haruna noticed more than 10 ashen cobblestones gathering around her. Launching a surprise attack, as she had done before, would no longer work here. Countless pits stretched ahead, promising a long and perilous journey. The most effective solution now seemed to be eliminating all her enemies at once. The girl's voice rose sharply, her scream echoing through the street and drawing the glances of the strange creatures crawling along the cobblestones. In an instant, every eye locked onto her. The townspeople of Reququiam seethed with anger at such brazen behavior. His plan hinged on confronting them one by one, or in small groups. Only a handful of narrow paths led toward her, making it nearly impossible for everyone to reach the girl at the same time. Despite her childlike appearance, a distinct aura of strength surrounded her. The dwellers of the stone-paved streets found it impossible to encircle her all at once. In battles like these, her opponents posed little challenge, easy prey at best. Simply hurling stones at them would be effortless. Yet that approach offered Haruna no chance to refine her skills. She chose to save her magic for moments of true danger, especially when the threat of being cornered loomed unexpectedly. Determined to give her all, she pushes herself to the limit in this match. With swift precision, the first attack from Kobla was effortlessly deflected. The poor soul was hurled straight to the very bottom of the arena. The intensity of their duel elevated her skills, yet determination burned within her to strive for even greater heights. With unwavering determination, she took down every monster that dared to challenge her. What troubled her most was the thought of descending to the bottom of the mine to retrieve the cobalt tails. Everyone watched in astonishment as Haruna remained rooted to the spot, completely motionless the entire time. Offer them an apology for what happened. Calm composure remained Haruna's shield while she defended herself, but now she prepared to take the initiative. The battle concluded unfavorably for the ashen cobblestones. Afterwards, Haruna descended to the very bottom of the mine to gather the remnants left behind. While Haruna gathered the firewood, her thoughts drifted to the combat techniques she had mastered in her previous life. Here, those same skills appeared far more striking and impressive. Perhaps her abilities were responsible for this transformation. By honing her talents further, she wondered if she might unlock techniques that once seemed impossible in her old world. At last, the task of gathering the shattered tail fragments came to an end, filling her with quiet relief. Thoughts drifted to the idea of mastering the art of dismemberment, especially if ending her opponents in battle became a frequent necessity. Consulting her teacher seemed the next logical step. With a handkerchief, she gently wiped the blood from her face. The handkerchief, a gift from Chinatu, held special meaning for her. Finding it stained with blood upset her deeply, and she knew she needed to wash it as soon as possible. Thoughts drifted to her magical bag, a curious thing where time held no sway and nothing placed inside would ever spoil. With that in mind, she carefully tucked the handkerchief away among its ageless contents. A gap in the wall caught my attention. Every ashen kobold seemed drawn to that very spot. Clearly, something must be hidden within that hole. Eventually, after reaching a dead end, she managed to discover the ore required for forging the new equipment. Just as Haruna basked in the joy of the news, Ben Ash Kobold silently crept up behind her. These creatures towered over any that Haruna had ever encountered before. Memories of Grandpa Jal's warning surfaced in Haruna's mind, reminding her of dangers just like this. Clearly, this mission was never meant to be easy. The ogre, sculpted from cobblestones, hefted a massive boulder and hurled it directly toward Haruna, cutting off her escape route. At that very moment, the leader of the Zolstone creatures lunged at Haruna, poised to strike. With agile precision, she dodged the attack. Instantly, she realized this was the chief among all the creatures. Haruna remembered her mentor Delsa's advice. Only after defeating every opponent could she begin collecting the fragments. With no other options remaining, acceptance of this battle became her only path forward. The supposed adversary proved far tougher than Haruna had anticipated. Her powerful blow merely vanished against his thick skin and dense fur. Targeting the joints seemed fruitless, and she quickly realized that his body structure was far too unusual, nothing like that of a human. With no options left, it was time to call upon magic. At last, her moment to act had arrived. At last, the long-awaited moment arrived. In days past, the goblin hero Musagawa unleashed formidable magic against the Dark Lord. Now, drawing upon that very same power, Haruna prepared to overcome the leader of the Sand Flints. In this world, there are several paths to mastering magic. The first is to memorize a magical skill, which instantly grants you the basics of spellcasting. Single-use scrolls hidden in dungeons offer another route. Using one unlocks a new spell. Some even inherit magical knowledge from someone else, passing ancient wisdom from one person to another. It was noted that so far, Haruna had managed to remember only a single basic dark magic spell. In response, Haruna confidently explained that this very spell had been the key to her victory over the Dark Lord. Another path leads to mastering powerful spells of dark magic. Advancing the relevant skill allows for the memorization of increasingly complex incantations. Mastery of the Advas spell demands that Haruna cast it repeatedly, continuing until her mana is completely depleted. Following her teacher's advice, Haruna practiced the spell relentlessly. Through constant use, she gradually unlocked the secrets of controlling this magic with precision and skill. The ashen cobblestones shifted toward her, drawn by an invisible force she summoned. Later, calling upon the power of Advaspell, we unleashed a toxic mass, hurling it directly at the stone creature's face. At last, casting the spell directly onto the beast's snout dulled its sense of smell. Aiming the same magic at its eyes would have sent waves of sharp pain through the creature and left it blinded. The leader of the Phantom Stone boasts extraordinary strength, yet the outcome remains inevitable. A relentless barrage of powerful blows from Haruna to the stone leader's legs finally brought him crashing down. With keen interest, Haruna watched to see how much longer the stone giant would endure. The ordeal left Haruna utterly drained, her legs barely able to support her trembling frame. She managed to defeat the leader of the Ashen Stone monsters. Triumph filled her heart, and pride warmed her spirit as she conquered her foe. Yet exhaustion claimed her so completely that Haruna collapsed onto the ground, utterly spent. The power of the cinder bricks was truly overwhelming. With her mana reserves dangerously low, Haruna's situation had reached a breaking point. Recklessness had brought her to the edge. After drinking the healing elixir, her strength returned swiftly. The blade pressed against the stone boss's tail, yet refused to budge. Not a sliver came free. Death had not diminished the power of the ashen boss. Its strength lingered on, unyielding. If Haruna kept forcing her knife, it would only snap in her hand. For a moment, she even considered whether she could somehow stow the entire body behind her back. At last, she possessed the skill to accomplish it. Now, the only task left was to obtain the ore. Exhaustion tugged at her, yet the importance of this step overshadowed her weariness. The hammer of the leader of the Ashen Kobolds crashed into the wall, sending fragments of ore scattering in all directions. Uncertainty clouded her mind as she searched for her next move. In the forest near the mine, Del waited patiently for his apprentice. Certain that this would be the moment Haruna completed her mission, he kept his focus sharp and his hopes high. Del asked Haruna how she found her first patrol. With a smile, she admitted it had been challenging, yet far more intriguing than she had expected. This particular hobby captivated Haruna. She explained to her teacher that she had managed to collect only small pebbles, but she had gathered quite a lot of them. Ella reassured her that with so many pebbles, there was no need to worry. Haruna then mentioned that her pebbles were much lighter than the ones the teacher had given her. Assuming that Haruna might have gained a level during this quest, he asked if she had checked her staff. Haruna acknowledged that a notification about leveling up had indeed appeared during the battle. However, she had been so deeply immersed in the fight that everything else faded into the background. With a quiet apology, she admitted her oversight. Haruna was told that she might have successfully advanced her professional rank. With a polite tone, Dallas requested permission from Haruna to look over her stats. Haruna replied without hesitation, reassuring him that it was perfectly fine. After all, as her mentor, he never needed to ask in the first place. Without warning, Windows announced that Haruna had been promoted to second-level partner. The message brought her a wave of delight. Hand-to-hand combat training proved to be far more challenging than mastering dark magic, a skill perfectly aligned with her profession. Nevertheless, Haruna poured every ounce of strength into the task, tirelessly honing her strikes against the unyielding stone. With her upgraded style, additional skill slots became available, but a nagging sense of unease lingered. Something didn't feel quite right. As the sun dipped low toward the horizon, the group decided to continue their conversation at home. Ahead, an important task awaited Haruna, preparing the evening meal. A suggestion was made to the teacher to hurry home, since she still had plenty of energy left. Dill, however, found little excitement in this idea. On the way home, Haruna and Dill resumed their earlier conversation. Flipping through her notebook, Haruna noted that advancing a profession typically granted just one additional skill slot. Yet, for some reason, she had gained two, a fact Dill readily confirmed. Within his skills, both as a master and a disciple, he discovered this truth. This ability emerged naturally. It wasn't something he intentionally studied. As his level increased and luck favored him, similar skills came into his possession. The system even allocated special slots specifically for talents like these. The apprentice's skills could only be used on those at the beginner level. Deciding to make Haruna his student on such short notice turned out to be a perfectly rational choice. When Dell first acquired this ability, he actually wondered if it might be some sort of mistake. The most crucial part centered on explaining how the teacher and student ability works and the influence it wields. Anyone who forms a contract with this ability gains 2 skill slots at each profession level up, rather than just one. Genuine surprise lit up her face, yet she couldn't help but admit how incredibly impressive it was. She went on to say that it brings tremendous benefits. Lost in thought, she considered which new skills would be the most worthwhile to learn. Haruna recalled her teacher's praise for her cutting technique, realizing how useful this skill was in battles against large groups of monsters like today. Dell agreed, mentioning that while it was indeed a valuable ability and simple to improve, enhancing it would only increase her agility. Pressing the skill's name during selection reveals its effects and the specific attributes it draws from. As Haruna explained this, she realized that comparing Dell's skill to hand-to-hand combat in this manner would make the difference between them strikingly clear. Considering ways to advance her skills, she toyed with the idea of exploring a different kind of elemental magic. The prospect of mastering various magical disciplines intrigued her. Despite her interest, Dell firmly discouraged this notion. Developing proficiency in 2 schools of magic would demand twice as much mana, effectively doubling the time needed to progress. Bruno dedicated himself to studying theory with the same fierce determination she brought to the battlefield. She would never have allowed such a gap to exist between them. The recommendation she received was to choose the skill called Jijutsu. Among mages, it stands alone as the only available combat technique. For those whose health, strength, and endurance are not their strongest suits, this skill offers a way to enhance those very attributes. When paired with a staff, it even amplifies magical prowess. Given her background in kendo, this ability might be an ideal fit. Haruna herself had suggested this approach. In addition, they recommended mastering the skill called Sweet Sleep. Haruna explained that this ability is essential for truly restful nights. Tells added that with this skill, the body recovers quickly during sleep, allowing one to wake up in the morning feeling refreshed and full of energy. This dream stands apart from ordinary ones, for it can not only be experienced, but also deliberately cultivated like a skill. The skill takes shape only while asleep. In other words, Haruna can continue her training even in dreams, steadily improving both her health and stamina. For close quarters fighting, this proves to be a real treasure. On top of that, fatigue melts away rapidly each time her abilities grow in this way. As soon as she selected her new skills, I immediately informed her mentor. Clutching her rune tightly, she headed straight to bed, eager to test out her new skill at the earliest opportunity. The thought crossed his mind that it was fortunate she had agreed without hesitation. With anxiety swirling inside her, falling asleep might not come easily. Yet perhaps the soothing presence of Haruna's spirit and body would calm her restless energy, which could only do her good. Before turning in for the night, Bells decided to look over Haruna's stats one more time. A quick glance at the status window sent a chill down his spine. The level of sweet dreams had already risen to 2. At last, the day of training drew to a close. The 4th day of training dawned. Dellis focused on his own tasks today, leaving the others to continue alone. Turning to Haruna, he requested that she travel alone to the city, deliver the Ortegan, and complete the task for the guild. Haruna accepted the mission and pledged to carry out her mentor's instructions. Her first stop was the weapon shop, where she handed the collected crystals to the shopkeeper. Noting their small size, the merchant quickly added that their abundance more than made up for it, making the transaction no trouble at all. Anita commended Haruna for a job well done, selecting one of the sparkling ornaments to examine it more closely. To Harumi, they appeared so heavy that she couldn't fathom how Haruna managed to hold them without letting them slip from her grasp. She asked Gain to choose a staff for her so she could begin her training. Taking on the task of preparing the stove, he asked Haruna to wait for a moment. The challenge of holding the Orstons perfectly still puzzled her, especially since their weight made the task nearly impossible. Driven by curiosity, she turned to Haruna and asked what she planned to create with them. Haruna admitted that their teacher had provided almost no instructions, leaving her just as uncertain about the final result. Laughter escaped her lips, recognizing that her mentor also never managed to explain anything clearly. From the remnants of ore, he forged something new, even though no one had requested such a commission. Rather than crafting an ordinary training piece, he produced a prototype. He also mentioned that he wanted nothing in return for his help. This unexpected declaration left Haruna and Anita genuinely astonished. She insisted that such an excellent service deserved proper payment. Anita agreed, pointing out that it would be unwise to refuse the money if Haruna insisted on giving it. Unyielding, he ordered both of them to be silent. This staff had been crafted solely for training purposes, with no intention of ever selling it. Such an item would never grace a display case. Still, since it was already finished, Haruna might as well take it. Expressing gratitude to Hanu, she promised to devote herself fully to mastering the sword through diligent training. He advised her to get accustomed to the sword while she still had the chance. Otherwise, when the most critical moment arrived, she might buckle under the strain. Haruna couldn't fully grasp the meaning behind his words. Visiting the weapon shop became a personal act of atonement for Haruna. Behind the counter stood a man with a metallic jaw, who greeted him with a friendly nod. Curiosity prompted me to ask Haruna about the reason for her visit today. Wondering if she had found yesterday's assignment too challenging, I pressed further. Haruna, however, reassured me that wasn't the case. She had simply come to announce the successful clearing of the den. Joel understood immediately and inquired why Haruna hadn't mentioned straight away that Dells had joined her and offered assistance. Haruna calmly corrected him, insisting that Joel was mistaken. He simply pointed her in the right direction, but offered no assistance during the actual battle. Joel struggled to accept what she had just heard, unable to wrap her mind around it. As a first-level mage, she managed to defeat an entire lair of ashy goblins on her own. The circumstances felt demeaning, as if the entire ordeal had been orchestrated purely for the sake of a reward. To prove her feat, Haruna presented a goblin's tail as evidence. The responsibility fell entirely on her shoulders. She requested a larger room for him, explaining that the one he had was far too cramped for someone of his considerable stature. Silence engulfed Yal as he stood there, lost for words and clearly at a loss. The group lingered in anticipation, waiting for the doors to the evaluation room to finally open. Meanwhile, Haruna made her way back home. The teacher pointed out that after the guild members sliced the boss Kabulu's body to pieces, Jal had no choice but to surrender. He never imagined she would manage to bring back the boss's body intact. The award was presented to her, and her contribution was returned in full. In addition, the guild bestowed upon Haruna the honorary title of adventurer, granting her access to special privileges reserved for those recognized by the guild. Genuine happiness filled him as his student achieved new successes. She needed to buy a new staff for training, since Della had only one old one left. She explained that the staff had been a gift from Gun. Bells listened in astonishment, unable to believe that Gun would willingly give something away. Could he truly like her that much? Conversations with Haruna flowed effortlessly, Her genuine warmth and kindness created an inviting atmosphere. The staff that Haruna brought caught my attention as I examined it closely. She described it as an ordinary training staff, yet its craftsmanship told a different story, revealing the hand of a true master. True to form, Dell reminded us that for those schooled in the old ways, their craft was a matter of honor, something he approached with unwavering dedication. For this reason, Haruna must handle the staff with the utmost care. Every time the staff rests in her hands, her attention sharpens, scanning her surroundings. The staff is tremendously heavy. Even a single careless step could send it crashing right through the floor. The enigmatic black magic stone can be found only in those caves. Dell chose to build his home in the heart of the wildlands, determined to secure absolute control over the extraction of this precious resource. It turned out that the ore was too heavy and challenging to process, so no one took it over. No one ever visits him, allowing for complete focus during his training sessions. That calm is abruptly interrupted, though, when a sudden knock sounds at the door. Upon opening the door, disappointment washed over him as the visitor failed to meet his expectations. A young woman appeared on the doorstep asking if Dell Fahrenheit lived here. The question about her familiarity with her teacher did not sit well with her, and his inquiry seemed to unsettle her. Addressing her as Nero, he asked her to stop frightening Haruna and to resist watching her from the doorway with such a predatory gaze, as if searching for a chance to attack. If Haruna were not his student, she would have probably fainted long ago. An awkward silence settled before Nero apologized for her behavior, explaining that she feared burglars had broken into the house. She had brought a cake but only managed to find 2 slices, so she suggested that Haruna share them with her. A wave of genuine relief washed over her at the suggestion, the fatigue of the expedition tugging at every muscle. Curiosity flickered in his eyes as he inquired about the expedition. Surprise washed over Neri's face. Apparently Dell had not shared anything with him at all. Her attire was still the same worn clothes she once wore on Harun. With embarrassment, Dell admitted that he hadn't mentioned their shared past with Neri. While discussing the idea of living together, Haruna reached the conclusion that Nero must be Delia's girlfriend. Both girls promptly denied her suspicion. Realizing she had jumped to conclusions, Haruna apologized for being too hasty. Observing the situation, she pointed out that Dell was at fault for not making the introduction earlier. There was no reason for Haruni to worry about it. Bells agreed with this sentiment and suggested that now was the perfect moment for them to become acquainted. Lamer, a long-standing ally of Dell, stands as the pride of the Dellgate Kingdom. Famed as the mightiest knight and the commander of the Magic Knight Squad, she dominates both battlefield and council chamber alike. Though swordsmanship is her true calling, even among mages, her powers remain unmatched. Her strength knows no rival, and an air of danger clings to her like a shadow, as if a beast lurked beneath the surface. Crossing her demands the utmost caution, remarking that Dells should refrain from calling this woman a monster. Afterward, a wave of fear swept over Haruna, leaving her unnerved even by the memory. Haruna saw the strength that Nehru displayed, but didn't feel even a hint of fear. Instead, inspiration surged through her. Eager for a true test of their abilities, Haruna now longs to challenge Nehru herself. She remarked that it truly was a brilliant idea, and wondered if they might give it a try right away. Nehru let out a laugh, calling it a clever joke, since the thought of Dells taking on a student had never once crossed her mind. In this way, Kamgaruna became Delsa's apprentice. Surprise flickered within me upon discovering that Nero had never heard this story. Confidence had led me to believe that Keenan would have already shared every last detail with her. Yet Nero admitted she only knew vague rumors, suggesting many young men had recently arrived in this world. Among the young people she mentioned, Haruna was one of them. Considered rather ordinary by most, Haruna caught Kanan's attention, prompting her to bring the girl here. Haruna recalled that Kanan had shown her various places before eventually deciding to teach her the fundamentals of labyrinth exploration. She admitted that she knew little about Kanan's reports to her superiors. At that time, the demands of various expeditions consumed her, leaving her torn between responsibilities and her personal life. Inside the castle, unfamiliar young men with dark hair caught her attention. Nero noticed their unwavering, intent gazes fixed on her. Only with great effort did she restrain herself from drawing her sword to teach them a lesson. Raised in an atmosphere of excessive leniency, these youths lack any sense of discipline. The moment they step beyond the castle walls, they seem to vanish without a trace. Idle chatter fills their days, while they neglect every responsibility expected of them. Arrogant by nature, some even gather into unruly gangs. Should they commit a crime, the knights will inevitably place them under strict control. Haruna warned that if such an event were to occur, her people would receive no mercy whatsoever. Her reply carried a tone of complete indifference, as if to say that there was nothing to be done about it now. Upon hearing this response, Nero realized whom Del had chosen as his apprentice. Among Haruna's classmates, there were true gems, their brilliance only beginning to show. She mentioned she needed to leave soon, so training with Haruna today wouldn't be possible. Certain that their paths will cross again, Nara looks forward to seeing the fruits of her training. She eagerly awaits the moment when they meet once more. Meanwhile, in the castle's garden, Chinatu found herself alone, sitting quietly on a bench. Once again, someone asked Chi if she was worried about Haruna. Annoyance bubbled up inside her at everything happening around them. Without any explanation, they had been transported to this strange world, forced to examine unfamiliar status screens, and then made to display their abilities in front of a crowd. The entire situation felt utterly senseless to her. Soka admitted that Haruna's situation had affected her deeply as well. She had wanted to speak with Haruna, believing at first that they were rivals. Now, however, Soka understood that Haruna was, in truth, a simple and rather ordinary person. Sue politely requested that they bring their conversation to a close. She replied with understanding, admitting that she was simply glad to have surpassed Haruna in something, even if just this once. The conversation came to an abrupt halt as Joseph and Nero stepped in, their voices rising in disagreement. Nero insisted that his actions were justified, emphasizing that these people were guests of their country and should be treated with respect. Joseph, however, challenged him, questioning why Nero had dared to throw a guest onto Del's shoulders without warning. Incidents like this, Joseph argued, should be reported directly to the king. Had Nero forgotten who he was dealing with? At that moment, Daru caught sight of Chinatu and Toa. Approaching Chinatu, she gently placed a hand on her shoulder. The woman asked for her name, yet the weight of her presence pressed so heavily that Chinatu could barely manage a reply. The last time Chinatu was insistent, urging her to become her student. Natsu stood deeply moved, her emotions stirred to the core. Sensing this, Mero gently asked if her uncertainty stemmed from those feelings. Chinatu need not worry about a thing, for Joseph would surely give his approval. She assured them that everything was in order because the Prime Minister himself had given his signature. With a warm greeting, she welcomed Chinatu, who had just become her pupil. Before long, Chinatu possessed every opportunity to rise as a heroine, destined to surpass everyone in this field. The events that had just unfolded remained a mystery to him. The fourth day of training had come to an end. A new day of training began, filled with anticipation and determination. It became clear to him that Haruna was advancing at an astonishing pace, perhaps even too quickly. At this rate, she would reach the third level in no time at all. As the training match intensified, Del glanced at Haruna and asked if she was starting to lose her balance. Perhaps a short break was in order. Haruna, however, replied with quiet confidence that she didn't need to rest. Today's training left Haruna utterly drained, and she collapsed onto her bed the moment she returned. However, the skill of restful sleep her mentor had taught her worked its magic, and within moments her energy returned and she felt wonderfully refreshed. Satisfaction welled within him, knowing his advice had proven useful as Haruna skillfully held her own against the monsters. Watching her progress throughout training sessions filled him with genuine pride. Haruna's cooking fills the house with delicious aromas, and every room remains spotless under her care. She handles each household duty with the quiet efficiency of a seasoned homemaker. Every day brings him joy as he sharpens his skills and strives to become better. Meanwhile, Aruna still struggles to land a hit on their teacher. Deciding to take a brief pause, he watched as everyone settled in for a snack. During this quiet moment, his attention drifted to Aruna's staff, curiosity drawing him to examine it more closely. Witnessing this scene, disbelief flickered across his face as Haruna's skills had undeniably reached the third professional level. It seemed almost unreal to her. After yesterday's intense training, Haruna had fallen straight into bed and slept soundly, unaware of any changes. But now, her mastery over dark magic had surpassed the 10th level, opening the door to a new possibility: the chance to learn another powerful spell. It became clear that my jujutsu skills had already surpassed my dark magic abilities. Both my restful sleep and prowess in hand-to-hand combat had improved remarkably since the last time I played. These must be the tangible rewards of persistent training. A thought crossed his mind about just how many more skills Haruna might be able to master. At the same time, he recalled that Kanan also possessed a profession of the 3rd rank. Arna turned to Del, eager to know how many more mastery levels she needed before she could reach the 4th tier of her profession. The answer lies in this. To advance to the 4th level, one must ensure that the combined total of ability and profession levels reaches 100. Among adventurers and knights, those who attain the 4th level earn recognition as true veterans throughout their homeland. After a quick calculation, she realized she needed just over half the required experience to reach the next level. Level 100 awaited her just ahead. Determined to succeed, she poured all her energy into reaching her goal as swiftly as possible. Bell noticed that, from now on, Haruna would be able to assist him with his work. Bell invited Haruna to join him on a hunt after lunch, giving her the perfect opportunity to sharpen her skills. Haruna saw hunting as another excellent way to improve herself. Haruna and Del arrived at the guild together, stepping through its grand entrance side by side. Luna greeted Joel warmly. He noticed that, as usual, Haruna brimmed with energy. Perhaps it was time to stop treating her like a child. Del offered his greeting as well, yet received nothing more than a cold silence in return. Del began to criticize the decision to send Harun into battle against Kabul Bao. Dels had no interest in listening to the old man's grumbling. He requested an assignment, eager to set out in search of the missing people. The old man expressed surprise at the boy's willingness to tackle such a task. Del, however, assured him that Haruna would be the one to accept and carry it out. Meanwhile, Del planned to stay close by so he would be near if any assistance was needed. Before leaving, he warned Haruna to flee the Del house without hesitation at the slightest sign of danger. I assured everyone that she would never act that way. Loyal to her mentor, she would stand by his side and face any danger with him. For Del, the presence of even one kind soul brought comfort amidst the turmoil. Thus, Delis arrived in the small town of Slem, nestled just a short distance from Diana. Luna asked Del if this was the same hunt he had mentioned earlier, since she thought they should be searching for monster victims in the mountains. Del reassured her that this truly was the real hunt. The hunt would not be for monsters, but for people. An uneasy shock ran through Haruna. It became clear that these demons truly hungered for human flesh. Haruni learned that the Midnight Syndicate controlled the city from the shadows. Even magical knights often turned a blind eye to their operations, recognizing that sometimes doing so worked in their own favor. At that very moment, 3 strangers closed in around Del and Haru. Noted that these individuals truly had the appearance of bandits, and likely belonged to the same organization. The way Haruna spoke about them clearly displeased them. Unfazed by their presence, she quietly continued her conversation. Had Haruna not paused, they would have surely attacked her. Luna turned to the teacher and asked if it was time to begin the beating. Everyone agreed, though they cautioned her to hold back. Don't go too far, after all, they still needed someone alive to lead them to the enemy boss. Luna understood her mentor's reasoning. Picking on the weak held no appeal for her, yet no other option was left to her. Del and Luna finally arrived at the old house, its weathered walls standing silent beneath the faded afternoon light. The bandits confidently assured them that their boss was indeed the person they sought. The group was instructed to approach their boss and announce Del's Fahrenheit had arrived to see him. The bandits exchanged surprised glances, unable to believe that Del's actually knew their leader. Encountering someone they didn't recognize could easily spell trouble. Yet, Del's answered with a sly grin, casually noting that this had happened before. Aruna arched an eyebrow, quietly chiding her teacher for spinning such contradictory lies. According to him, Reququiam, the leader of the North, is an old acquaintance. However, Requiem now constantly shifts locations, making it quite difficult to track him down. A stranger stepped out of the house. Judging by his presence, Bells assumed the man must be a senior member of the organization, even though his face failed to spark any recognition. The man offered to escort them to the nearest bus stop. The group pressed on, following a path that wound through the terrain in a deliberately tangled fashion. Haruna noticed how confusing the trail was, prompting Bell to explain that its intricate design was intentional, meant to ensure no one could find the way here alone. She greeted Requiem warmly and inquired about his well-being. He replied that everything had been just fine until Dell showed up. Spotting Haruna, we assumed Dell had brought her here to sell. That would certainly explain a lot. Gills explained that Haruna was his apprentice, and Requiem understood, realizing it was not his business. With nothing left to discuss, he asked Dell to leave. Since the day they met, Dell insisted that Requiem start behaving himself. Requiem replied that he already had enough on his plate today, but Dell remained persistent. Dell warned him that if Requiem didn't handle things now, it wouldn't be him coming next time. It would be Nero. The name Requiem left him stunned. He continued, calmly explaining that he had his reasons. After all, he and Requiem were the closest of friends. His departure would change everything. At that moment, Requiem interrupted and agreed to speak with Dell. A few days earlier, a group of newcomers arrived in the city. Most of them appeared to be around the same age as Haru. He inquired with his assistant about any news regarding the event. The assistant explained that 3 days earlier, distinguished ladies had arrived in the city. Concrete details were scarce, yet whispers circulated that newcomers bearing gifts had appeared in Hainal. Delis remembered clearly that the girls were the same age as Haruna. There were several of them, after all. Still, this fact alone did not satisfy his curiosity. He decided to ask where those girls were now. The council replied that a few of them are currently under their protection. However, the original number of girls remains a matter of speculation. He expressed hope that all the girls were safe. Requiem speculated that they had already left the secure area. Understanding that Dell was trying to bring them back, he decided to let Dell handle the situation in his own way. Biam had recently noticed that the boys from Hainava were increasingly pushing the boundaries. If their disruptive behavior continued, they would soon learn a harsh lesson. He asked his companion if he truly intended to test Haruna's strength. That girl carried a unique power. Requiem understood Dell's true nature, but this time he had clearly gone too far. Dell, buoyed by a good mood, had already gathered the information he needed and secured permission to operate in the area. With everything seemingly in place, only the final steps remained. Unexpectedly, Requiem stepped in and brought him to a halt. Confusion lingered in his mind as he watched everyone treat Haruna with such courtesy. Requiem remarked that he would never sleep soundly if something unfortunate befell her because of Dell. In response, Dell calmly stated that while her appearance might not seem impressive, she was, in truth, quite capable of handling herself. Wim's subordinates reported that those three were only second rank. Yet appearances can be deceiving. Rumors swirl about the arrival of 5 newcomers in town. Whispers suggest that each one possesses remarkable abilities. The group's frustration mounted over the city's lingering mistrust, even after their constant efforts. In response, Dells explained that they had been pressed for time. Still, he had no objections to letting them test Haruna's abilities. William claimed she possessed the strength to challenge death itself. Haruna's admiration shone openly, her excitement impossible to hide. The reason behind Haruna's enthusiasm remained a mystery to us. However, Dell understood perfectly well that in battle, no one could match Dats's prowess. If Maruna manages to hold her ground against him, he will acknowledge her. After that, Dell will have the freedom to move about Hainawa and enjoy unlimited access to the brothel. Requiem only asks that they behave with a little more gentleness. Now everything stands prepared for the decisive stage. Before long, the battle drew to a close. Requiem found himself surprised that Haruna managed to land a strike on Dots, prompting him to end the match. He started to apologize, but Requiem interrupted, telling him there was no need for apologies. In a real fight, making the right decisions at every moment is what truly matters. As long as she set her sights on Hainawa, everything would be just fine for her. Despite taking a direct hit, Darts wore an unsettlingly unnatural expression on his face. He admitted that even he was taken aback. The blow had far more force than it first appeared. Moreover, the moment the fight began, a striking transformation swept across her eyes. In the heat of battle, she seemed to radiate with an inner light, but in the next instant, her eyes burned with a fierce thirst for blood. The conversation touched on more than just her remarkable skill. Thoughts drifted to the kind of life she must have led to become who she is now. Complete dedication seems to define her every action. According to Reququiam, this comes as no surprise, given that even Darts held her abilities in such high regard. Now concern grows for the fate of the boys from Hainawa. Our curiosity led us to ask what Darts had done to him after the fight. Could Darts have healed his injuries? Atsu felt embarrassed to admit it, but the truth lingered. Haruna's blow had inflicted pain so intense it was nearly unbearable. All the while, only sheer determination kept him going. In that moment, Reququiam realized Dats had been enduring excruciating pain for quite some time. Credit went to Haruna for making him feel it so deeply, and to Delsa for shaping her through relentless training. Even during these training sessions, genuine laughter often filled the air. Relief washed over me, grateful that everything had turned out well, yet Haruna saw things differently. She pointed out that if she hadn't mastered the art of dodging today, the outcome could have been drastically different. When she struck Datsu, not a single muscle twitched on his face. He replied that the difference in their abilities was likely to blame. In his view, this was simply a sign of his fifth-level prowess. Maruna realized this, and genuine surprise flickered across his face. His journey began in the depths of the underworld. Countless skirmishes marked his path, not all of them battles for survival. Such challenges were simply commonplace in that world. Memories returned to her in fragments, each moment stretching as though time itself slowed just for her, lending certainty to her every action. Yet no true danger threatened her. Haruna asked Del what exactly they were doing. Del laid everything out for her, but Haruna still had questions swirling in her mind. She couldn't understand why the Nara Knights weren't handling this situation, since it seemed crucial for the whole country. Del explained that the Knights were probably aware, and maybe even already involved, but they tended to avoid meddling in city affairs. Going up against the city's real rulers could stir up public unrest, and the Knights simply didn't have the numbers to maintain order. The government had promised not to interfere with the affairs of the town or its people, while the city administration, in turn, pledged not to trouble anyone outside their settlement, slaves being the only exception. A problem has surfaced in the city, a situation that calls for individuals like them. To ensure the reward does not become linked with the authorities, the guild arranges fake requests and handles the payments discreetly on its own. The events unfolding around her remained a blur, their meaning just out of reach. Del observed that discussions like these were far too advanced for someone her age. Memories of her battle with death surfaced for Haruna. In that critical moment, her talents shone brilliantly, so much so that the others failed to realize she was casting magic. By honing her skills in the art of darkness, Haruna managed to master a gravity spell, granting her command over its formidable forces. At the very last moment, she intensified the gravity within her hand. While touching Haruna, she secretly used the Atlas spell to create a poison, something she had never mentioned to Reququiam. Fortunately, Del managed to erase all traces before anyone could discover the truth. Tolth Haruni receives word that her next match will pit her against her own classmates. A smile spread across her face as anticipation built within her, eager for the chance to outshine her classmates. A grand mansion stood quietly on the outskirts of Diana. Satsutsuki, a third-rank warrior, shared the table with Tanaka, a merchant of equal standing. Nearby, Sato, a fourth-rank swordsman, shuffled his cards, and Hashi, a third-rank mage, watched the game unfold. Gathered together, they sat around the table, fully immersed in a lively poker match. Edo, a monk of the third rank, joined them at the table. When strange noises echoed from outside, tension filled the air. Suzuki quietly turned to Edo, asking him to step out and investigate the source of the disturbance. After their arrival in this world, escape from the castle became their first taste of freedom. Sato led the charge, fed up with the constant surveillance that shadowed their every move to prevent any vital secrets from leaking out. The kingdom only showed concern for those who had reached the 3rd level or higher, ignoring everyone else. The other two quickly rallied behind Sato's bold decision, while Ido remained on the sidelines, taking no real part, content to act as little more than an errand boy. After escaping from the castle, Sato wasted no time resorting to violence. He ran protection rackets, committed robberies, and orchestrated kidnappings. Eventually, he joined the powerful Gainal group, which flourished under Tron's rule, reaching the height of its influence. Although those three far outmatched the boys from Hajnal in strength, a conflict is brewing with the most powerful conservative organization. Midnight draws near. If things continue this way, they may well seize control of the entire country. Sometime earlier, Del and Haruna arrived at the Manor of Throne, the head of the Hinawa faction. Both felt certain that this was the place where Haruna's 5 classmates would be found. Security guards at the entrance brought them to a halt, confirming for Haruna and Del that they had arrived at the correct mansion. He explained to Haruna that he usually relied on his own methods for getting inside, but this time she was free to use her own judgment and hold nothing back. Everyone here was a criminal, so even if someone had to be killed, it would cause no trouble. A gentle smile brightened her face as she assured the teacher she would do exactly that. In that instant, she lunged at one of the guards, channeling every ounce of her strength into the blow. The blow landed with such force that the guard was sent flying, crashing hard into the nearby wall. Arrows whistled through the air as the archers unleashed a volley aimed straight at Haru. With effortless grace, Haru caught every arrow that flew toward him. With swift, practiced movements, Haru easily dispatched every guard stationed outside. Declaring that the time for talk had ended, he insisted that the moment to act had arrived. Inside the mansion, their arrival was anticipated. Those within stood ready to confront any uninvited visitors. The gang launched an attack on Taruna, yet she skillfully deflected each of their blows with her staff. With a stern warning, she forbade Harun from putting on any sort of spectacle. These wretches were unworthy even of a place beneath the sky. Luna understood the teacher's intentions and swiftly moved to finish off the one still lying on the ground. No one expected any other reaction from Haruna. He noted her true ruthlessness. That was simply how they were, sir. Even so, Haruna could have chosen a less cruel approach. Her reply was simple. She saw them as monsters, so their fate meant nothing to her. A few more members of the group came down the stairs. Haruna assured everyone she would deal with them in just a moment. Permission granted, she boldly urged them to attack, her taunts sharp and unyielding. The group instantly turned their attention to Haruna and Del, surrounding them with an eager intensity. Edo happened to be passing by at that moment. The sight of an axe embedded in the wall caught his eye, and the strange cries and clattering noises coming from the smithy left him bewildered. The realization dawned on him that this was no ordinary drunken scuffle. An urge to turn back and call for others flickered in his mind, but he dismissed it at once, certain that no one would believe him anyway. Driven by curiosity, he set out to investigate the situation and found himself deeply shaken by what he saw. Bodies lay scattered across the floor in a chaotic sprawl. Someone was making their way up the stairs, but his legs refused to respond. Maruna recognized him as a former classmate from school. Day after day, Edo could do nothing but silently endure the relentless bullying of his classmates, forced to watch helplessly as their torment continued. Without warning, Haruna came to a sudden halt. A wave of relief washed over him as the class's attention shifted to someone else. The thought brought a faint sense of comfort. Finally, the teasing might end. For the first time in a while, safety no longer felt out of reach. Hope flickered within him that Haruna would stand strong against every tormentor. The boys found it hard to accept their defeat at the hands of a single girl. From that day on, no one dared to bother Edo as long as Haruna was by her side. In that moment, Haruna captured Edo's heart. Bewilderment washed over Edo as he tried to grasp why Haruna stood before him at that moment. Del turned to Haruna and asked if she knew the boy. She explained that he was one of her classmates. That meant he was part of their group. Del had pictured them as something entirely different. For the last time, Theta asked about his purpose in this place. Ordinary people could never hope to infiltrate the world of villains. Theta began questioning Hito, curious about his reasons for being here when he had vanished from the castle just days earlier. Before Hito could respond, Haruna interrupted, gently pointing out that Edo often feels shy around strangers. Fear gripped Edo, convinced that death awaited him if he did nothing. He recalled how Sato had dragged him from the castle by force. Ever since, Edo's days blurred together as he became Sato's unwilling servant, compelled to obey every command handed down to him. Delch learned from him that the other four formed a tight-knit group of troublemakers. Their favorite pastime was tormenting Edo, whom they regarded as worthless. He reported that the kidnapped girls were being held in the mansion's basement and insisted they needed to be rescued as soon as possible. In truth, his own interests outweighed any concern for their safety. Dato revealed to Dells that it was Sada who orchestrated all the abductions. The truth settled over Dells, bringing instant clarity. According to his words, if things truly stood that way, the first priority would be to eliminate the very source of the evil. Once he drifted into sleep, the group quietly continued on their way. Laughter echoed from behind the door, assuring Dell and Haruna that they had arrived at exactly the right place. Suddenly, they noticed an uncanny silence pressing in from all sides. The room seemed perfectly shielded from any noises of the outside world. Anticipating an attack long before reaching the room, he had expected tighter security. Instead, the so-called guards proved utterly disappointing. Despite their affiliation with a major organization, they lounged about, lost in their amusements, indifferent to any sense of vigilance. The situation struck him as nothing short of disgraceful. Luna suggests launching a discreet attack on the enemy, but Dell advises her to hold back and proceed with greater caution. An unwavering resolve pulses within her, ready to wipe out every last one of these monstrous beings without a flicker of remorse. Yet doubt quietly creeps into her mind. What if, hidden among these creatures, are some of her old school friends? The thought lingers. Could she truly bring herself to end their lives as well? Luna explained that punishment would depend on the severity of the offense. However, if anyone attempted to kill her in retaliation, she would have no choice but to defend herself. With unwavering determination, Haruna clings to life, refusing to let any scoundrels bring her down. Her response was calm and unwavering. She would do as she always had. At that moment, Suzuki realized that Ida had vanished some time ago and still had not returned. Tanatsuko speculated that if they managed to introduce poker to this world, the profits from organizing the game could be considerable. That amount would have been more than enough to meet all their needs. In truth, they are simply enjoying each other's company with her. Nako burst into laughter, her heart genuinely lifted by the happiness filling the room. The joyful moment shattered, however, when the door suddenly crashed off its hinges. With a thunderous crash, Haruna burst into the room, hurling the door straight onto the floor. Disappointment flickered across his face when he realized it wasn't Sato. Yet he couldn't help but acknowledge Haruni's stroke of luck. It was remarkable she managed to hit anyone at all. While a sense of calm filled the air for him, Haruna experienced something quite different. To her, everything seemed unsettled and off balance. Luna never imagined she would be forced to take such drastic measures so soon. The sudden appearance of Haruna directly in their path took them by complete surprise. Along Haruna's path, only 3 monsters appeared, standing together to form a single, menacing figure. Haruna had been branded as mediocre in this world, a label that provided the perfect excuse for him to take out his anger on her. Circumstances had shifted since their previous lives. Now, their strength far surpassed Haruna's. The logic behind their actions escaped me. Taking hostages would have been a far smarter move, one that might have forced Haruna to reconsider. Perhaps they placed absolute faith in their own decision. Ready for battle, he unleashed his unique technique known as the Red Ribbon. Sato promised Haruna a display of a power reserved for him alone, vowing it would be his final gift to her. Red energy tinged his skin as he awakened the hidden tail, his unique ability, ready to reveal its true force. Dell's mind wrestled with confusion as Sato's anxious demeanor remained a mystery to him. Shame washed over Dell, realizing that Sato had revealed all his cards on his own. All Dell could do was hope that Haruna would remain vigilant and not let her guard down. A shiver ran through him as anticipation for what lay ahead coursed through his veins. With each passing moment, The vast gulf in combat prowess between him and Haruna became unmistakably clear. Supported by Suzuki and Takahashi and their commanding magic, victory felt almost within his grasp. Realization dawned that it intended to send a signal, urging them to attack from every direction. The rune activated before they could even begin to react. With a swift kick aimed at her target, she attacked, but Sado reacted just in time, skillfully dodging so that the blow missed by mere inches. Without hesitation, she commanded everyone to launch an immediate assault on Haru. A sudden burst of speed from her opponent did not escape her notice, nor did it go unnoticed by Gel. Tail grants a temporary boost to the abilities of its user and their allies, though the effect's duration hinges on agility. The greater the agility, the briefer the enhancement. Gel paused to consider whether this meant they could now outpace Haru. With effortless grace, she parried his strike and shattered his sword with a single swing of her staff. Utilizing the red tail technique, every boy in the lineup was defeated in under 10 seconds. Even so, Haruna admitted there was still much she had to learn. Lost in thought, she considered how impressive this technique appeared on the surface, yet every use left her with a noticeable drain of energy. Beyond that, their complete lack of skill with swords was painfully obvious. He moved from person to person, healing everyone nearby, while Haruna struggled to understand the reason behind his actions. Known for his boundless compassion, the teacher had always stood apart from others. For a fleeting moment, it seemed impossible for her to accept that the real Del now stood before her. A realization washed over her. Haruna had managed to conquer the ordeal, remaining unbroken despite the onslaught of cruelty. Yet when faced with a true test of her humanity, she undeniably fell short. This arrangement suited Del's perfectly. His response carried no warmth. He had only healed them because the reward for the lip promised to be much greater. Harun advised her not to linger there any longer, but to leave and join up with the rest of the group, since their main forces had already been defeated. Realizing the importance of keeping Trona alive, Haruna decided he must be preserved so she could eventually hand him over to the Northern Organization, securing the deal they had arranged. He announced his intention to set out and attempt to rescue the kidnapped girl. He summoned the girls over, intending to question them about something specific. Upon waking, Del appeared before him. Confusion clouded his mind as he found himself shackled. Del inquired whether Edo truly believed they would ever let him leave on his own so easily. At this moment, Deltz serves as his bait. The room grew tense as Del began his tale. These men, hardened by crime, had fled the castle, kidnapped girls from nearby towns, and forced them into slavery. With bold disregard for the nation's laws, they carried out their deeds. Such actions ordinarily merited execution on the spot, but for now, loudly insisting on his innocence, he claimed no involvement. According to him, Seigo and the others were to blame, while he simply followed along and took no action himself. Confidence filled him. Shifting the blame onto others would surely secure his escape. He made it clear that, in the eyes of this country, they meant nothing. Now, urgency pressed upon him to settle everything before unnecessary rumors could begin to spread. Even Edo showed signs of unease. Tells interrogates the girls who were kidnapped, and in the midst of the conversation, his own name comes up. Indifference shrouds him when it comes to their feelings, intentions, or actions. Their deeds and the manner in which they escaped hold no weight in his mind. They fled the castle, taking with them crucial information, and their very existence carries value in his eyes. Tells refuses to forgive such betrayal. Those bold enough to attempt it will find no mercy. He realized that his actions alone didn't warrant a death sentence, but such considerations meant nothing to Telsa. After dismissing everyone, he announced that he had a special proposal prepared for them. He arranged a selection of weapons for everyone and invited each person to choose one that suited their preference. Curious, he asked Dells what exactly he meant. He declared that if they managed to defeat him, they would be free to leave without facing any consequences. Convinced that fear had gripped them during their clash with Haruna, he now invited them to face him directly in battle, eager to see how they would respond when the challenge came from him alone. He also pointed out that one of the reasons was the desire to test whether they were worthy of becoming candidates in the fight against the Dark Lord. He explained his desire to stay in shape, knowing that skipping training sessions could lead to defeat during a sparring match with Haru. The chance to strike never came. Del ended his life in an instant, The others surged forward, joining the fray. This time the plan involves using magic. Edo received his confession with calm understanding. Realizing his deep feelings for Haruna, Edo gently revealed that her heart already belonged to another. Del shares a roof with her, enjoys the delicious meals she prepares, and spends cheerful moments together. El's anger flared at those words, and she lunged at him with sudden ferocity. Neither his strength nor the combined efforts of the others were enough to bring down El. Once again, she set to work tending their wounds, her hands moving gently as she healed them. She tended to their wounds, then plunged back into the fray, repeating this cycle until everyone was utterly defeated. Bells found herself growing even more disappointed in him with every round. The scene brought to mind teenagers freshly handed their driver's licenses, suddenly taking the wheel of a powerful race car. Impressive stats and high potential would never substitute for true mastery when it came to harnessing their own strength. What kind of fight against the Dark Lord could be waged with such inexperienced candidates? Those who found themselves suddenly transported to another world received far too many privileges. If the rest of the people had been granted the same advantages, the consequences would have been disastrous. Determined to tidy up before Haruna arrived, I set to work putting everything in order. In an instant, Balil's shadow pulled in all the boys, drawing them deep inside himself. A sense of satisfaction washed over him as order finally settled into his surroundings. The presence of Haruna seemed to have inspired this newfound tidiness. Luna relayed to Dels that her task was complete. Dels asked her how everything had gone. She informed him that every member of Hainawa had been dealt with, including all 16 on the second floor and those stationed on the 21st. Driven by compassion, she organized the evacuation of the slaves to save their lives. Tron was discovered near Sato's room. First, she stunned him, and then, to ensure he couldn't escape, broke his leg. Offering her praise, he promised that tonight they would share a dinner together. News came that the rest of the hostages had been discovered in the underground chambers and handed over to the knights. The captives Haruna had led out now found themselves under the careful protection of the Midnight Organization members. Luna wondered what had happened to her former classmate. His reply was that he had sent them to a place perfectly suited just for them. Edo left the city behind and journeyed to distant lands, searching for a peaceful and quiet life. Luna observed that everything had turned out for the best. Life was too precious to waste, as there was always a chance to achieve anything. Deep in thought, Del considered that if the others had simply tried to improve themselves, even without lofty ambitions, they could have easily defeated him by joining forces. Encountering extraordinary abilities marked a significant accomplishment, yet it left much to be desired. After resolving every issue, they entrusted the throne to the Midnight Organization and then made their way to the marketplace. She admitted without a hint of embarrassment that the idea of cooking meat popped into her mind the moment she saw Tron, who resembled a well-fed pig. In addition to the guild reward, Dels and Haruna received hush money from the organizer of Northern Midnight and the government, ensuring they kept all details strictly confidential. In celebration of completing the mission, Haruna poured her heart into preparing a grand feast. Hills inquired of Karuna how much her stats had improved after the battle. Luna admitted she had completely forgotten to check her stats after the battles. Determined not to put it off any longer, she immediately opened her status screen. The status window revealed that Haruna's stats had improved slightly, and her mastery level had risen as well. Disappointment flickered across Haruna's face as her profession level refused to rise. Del calmly explained that such progress couldn't be achieved in a single minute. Ariuna, it seemed, was simply trying to rush things too much. The rapid progress of evasion and throw caught her completely off guard, given that she had only just learned these skills today. Advancement to the 4th level was now within reach, even though Haruna had reached the 3rd level only a short while ago. Most people spend a decade honing this skill through relentless practice. This time, Haruna simply nodded in silence, fully aware that determination was something she lacked. When asked about her thoughts on the new skills, Haruni expressed her satisfaction. Through Yuvaret, she now sensed exactly where she could move, and with the throw, she could hurl objects with surprising ease, barely having to use any effort at all. Her words proved true. The ability to dodge really made it easier to avoid incoming attacks, as if an invisible instinct guided her movements. The skill called Throw allowed her to control both the force and trajectory of her flight with remarkable accuracy, letting her navigate through the air almost effortlessly. None of these skills relate to her profession. Instead, they perfectly complement Haruna's fighting style, making up for the attribute she lacks. Now fully prepared for all sorts of combat scenarios, Luna needs only a single book to drift into peaceful sleep. Luna's dark magic has now surpassed the 20th level, opening the door for her to master new spells. Example Dies is a spell of dark magic that conjures swirling clouds of black smoke, forming a dense shroud perfect for concealment. Luna couldn't hide her excitement as she admired the extraordinary magic, eager for the moment she could put it to use herself. In this way, the 5th day of training drew to a close. In the middle of the night, Della awoke to find Haruna nestled against his back, her arms gently wrapped around him. Della attempted to wake Haruna, yet she stubbornly refused to open her eyes. The moment a full cleansing was performed, Haruna instantly awakened. When asked why she was lying in his bed, Haruna calmly replied that she had a very important reason. Her intent was to enhance the effectiveness of the special Sweet Dream passes. It became clear that, among all the skills, mastering the art of a peaceful, sweet sleep took the most time to perfect. The time has come to uncover the true reason behind it all, once and for all. The absence of her beloved dog Pyro weighed heavily on her, leaving her longing for the warm embrace they used to share each night. Although Haruna rarely worried about getting a good night's sleep, it became clear that resting in familiar, comfortable surroundings greatly enhanced the strength of her protective barrier. Warning Haruna not to treat him like a dog, he slams his fist against the ground in anger. Though pleased by Haruna's dedication, he gently reminds her that balance should be kept in all things. Luna explained that Del felt like a father to her, so she didn't attach much importance to it. Luna confessed how much she enjoyed sleeping beside someone. The comforting presence brought her such peace that she drifted into sleep almost instantly. Allowing Haruna to share the night with him, he made it clear this privilege would be granted only once, and only for tonight. Swept up in a surge of excitement, Bruno suddenly embraced Della. The 6th day of training camp unfolded. Del struggled to get a proper night's sleep, constantly disturbed by Haruna. With her persistent interruptions, restful nights would remain out of reach for him. As the door swung open, revealing a line of people waiting just beyond, she greeted him with a gentle good morning. Arriving with a tray of brownies, she explained that this time she had brought 3 slices because Del had been eager to try them. Clearly pleased, he invited Nero to join them for breakfast. A sense of surprise washed over him as he took in the table, lavishly spread with an array of tempting dishes. Curiosity sparked in him as he asked Neri what had brought her here this time. Was she truly here to discuss what happened yesterday? In response, Neri explained that the matter had already become public knowledge, and Joseph would not let her forget it, constantly bringing it up. Should this information come to light, eliminating Della would become necessary for her. In truth, that wasn't the main reason for her visit. Much more significant news awaited. Nero now had a student of her own. Noticing the striking resemblance between her student and Haruna, she decided this girl would make an excellent rival for her. She intends to invite Haruna for a sparring match with her student, hoping to hold a friendly competition so they can all grow stronger together. Setting out on her journey with her student, Nero looks forward to the possibility of Haruna joining their group along the way. The purpose of this expedition is to eliminate the one known as the Dark Lord. Squads of magical knights are formed to take on the most dangerous monsters, threats far beyond the abilities of ordinary adventurers. The commander personally leads the knights into battle when the mission is particularly demanding. In reality, Nero effortlessly takes down every monster in their path, turning what was meant to be a dangerous expedition into nothing more than a casual stroll. Naturally, not just anyone is chosen for the expedition. Still, its immense popularity attracts a constant stream of hopeful applicants. Belle had also heard that heirs of noble families were often compelled to join these journeys, giving them a first-hand taste of real danger. Alongside Nero's apprentice, Garna too received the honor of an invitation. Haruna set off toward the weapon shop. Upon learning that Haruna planned to embark on a journey to confront the Lord of Darkness, Manita's eyes widened with genuine surprise, and concern for her friend weighed heavily on her heart. In this world, certain individuals announce the arrival of the Dark Lord, while others go so far as to impersonate him. This is common knowledge. Above them all reigns the true Dark Lord, Dega Chima, the supreme master of all the forces of darkness. Known collectively as the Lords of Darkness, these beings hold no innate hostility toward humankind. The name monsters was bestowed upon them by people themselves. Gun appeared suddenly, announcing that he had completed Dell's request. Dell apologized for the abrupt favor, but Gun simply waved it off, unconcerned. Thanks to the black magic Haruna had brought, he still had plenty left at his disposal. Crafted from black magic ore, these projectiles far surpass ordinary stones in power. Black magic ore possesses the unique ability to absorb only the first type of energy it encounters, making it a singularly potent weapon. Ask Dells if their expedition might prove too great a challenge for Haruna, considering they will be facing the so-called Lord of Darkness himself. Dells assures that this so-called Lord of Darkness is little more than a braggart, and as long as Haruna is by their side, they will have nothing to fear. Memories surfaced of Dell and Nero as children, frequently dropping by his shop. Meanwhile, Dell is already making her way to the next destination. The pair stepped into the magical item shop, Isekai'D, where treasures from across the land lined the shelves. Local crafts shared space with rare artifacts unearthed from distant dungeons. Every item gleamed with undeniable value, and the steep prices reflected just how precious these magical goods truly were. Haruna gazed thoughtfully at the wide variety of objects before her, taking in their different shapes and colors. Dells began to explain to Haruna that these scrolls contained magic. They offered another path to mastering new spells, aside from increasing one's own level. Hidden within their parchment lay exceptionally powerful magic. Such artifacts could only be found in the deepest parts of dungeons, which sometimes made their value equal to that of an entire tome of magic. The group arrived in search of scrolls for Haruna. At Dell's request, the shopkeeper brought out dark magic scrolls of up to the 5th tier. The shopkeeper showed no surprise when Haruna requested a level 30 scroll. After all, she was a student of the esteemed Mr. Della, and such a connection suggested the girl possessed remarkable intelligence. A wave of concern washed over Bruno when he discovered the astonishing price of the scrolls. Delia patiently explained that such treasures were typically reserved for the wealthy elite or members of the royal family. Trading in rare items often brings swift fortune. For this reason, the quest for valuable treasures stands at the heart of every adventurous journey. Every unique scroll remains carefully guarded by the government, leading to their astonishing rise in value. As a result, most of the most powerful mages are also among the wealthiest. Some fortune seekers stumble upon scrolls in deep dungeons or during their quests, and on rare occasions, luck delivers exactly the scroll they need at the most crucial moment. Occasionally, inexperienced merchants let valuable scrolls slip away for next to nothing. Yet, in this shop, every item undergoes careful scrutiny. At times, the staff specifically set out to track down these unseasoned sellers. The scroll merchant presented Haruna with a list of artifacts that might suit her needs. Among all the options, she found the spells of poisonous mist, water detection, and mind disarmament to be the most fitting for her purposes. The group announced their intention to purchase all 3 scrolls, leaving the shopkeeper visibly astonished. These particular scrolls rarely attracted any buyers. The seller began her explanations with the workings of these spells, mentioning poisonous mist first. This incantation summons a cloud of venom that spreads across a wide area. While its power is modest, the affected zone is impressively large. However, a serious drawback exists. The poison harms everyone except the caster, so even allies risk falling victim to its effects. The wizard conjures a lethal poison that pools in his palm, summoned by a spell. For someone of his abilities, this technique is impressively strong. Yet the magic has a clear limitation. The deadly liquid forms only on his hand. Holding a substantial amount proves difficult, limiting the spell's overall effectiveness and making it challenging to use in practice. Suppression is a spell that clouds the victim's mind. Once cast, the person loses all sense of sound judgment. However, the spell only takes effect through physical touch, and the sorcerer's magical power must be strong enough to activate it. The day of training finally drew to a close. The seventh day of training began. Although Nero had said the expedition would only begin tomorrow, she gathered Dels and Haruna today, as an important task awaited them. Genuine joy filled her heart when they responded to her request. Before the expedition, she explained, it was important to test the strength of her subordinates. In his view, the number of people gathered here fell short of what was needed for a proper team. She pointed out that bringing more people along would have only slowed their progress. In the end, destiny had chosen her alone to defeat the Dark Lord. Now Nairu wished to introduce them to her student. Del suspected that perhaps this entire gathering had been arranged simply so Nairu could show off. Speaking with a hint of pride, Nairu announced her student's name, Chinatu. Could it really be the same Chinatu who was Haruna's friend? Without hesitation, Luna recognized her friend and rushed into her arms. Atsu introduced herself to Del, and Nero responded by sharing his own name. Haruna observed that together, they truly made an excellent team. Now he moved on to introduce his subordinate. The Dagon Knights team consists of Muno, a 4th-level mage, Mage, a mage of the 3rd rank, and Canon, who also wields skills at the 3rd level. Dagon's demeanor truly reflected his age, while the two young magicians clearly possessed remarkable talents. Yet Canon harbored a fear of Nero, and Munu had risen to his current standing largely due to strong family backing. She brought the younger ones along so they could gain valuable experience, while Dog frequently stepped in to protect them. Munu, on the other hand, opposed having children take part in this expedition. The purpose of today's gathering, he explained, was simply to test their abilities, so practice matches awaited them now. The announcement rang out that the first match would feature Moon facing off against Del. Moon accepted the challenge and pledged to live up to the trust placed in him by his captain, who took great pride in his achievements. Slumini, the second son of the distinguished Slumini family, grew up surrounded by age-old traditions and the enduring prestige his lineage commanded. Generation after generation, his family upheld their noble heritage and maintained a position of high social standing. Last year, he graduated with honors from the Magic Academy and proudly joined the ranks of the Magic Knights. Captain Nero's heartfelt graduation speech left a lasting impression on him, yet a tangle of paperwork delays kept him from joining the squad right away. With Captain Nero away on an expedition and only recently returned, it was only today that he finally managed to greet her in person. In his eyes, her gaze radiates nobility and insight, while the golden strands of hair cascading gently over her shoulders lend her an extraordinary beauty. She brings to mind a majestic night flower, the very embodiment of the mysterious allure of the night. Fondly believes that Del struck a secret agreement with his apprentice to keep a close eye on Captain Narelle. Instead of stepping forward himself, he suggested Haruna should be Mono's opponent. The prowess of a student, after all, is a testament to the skills of their teacher. Neri found no reason to object to this proposal. A fierce argument erupted between Haruna and Muna. Intent on reassuring Haruna that there was no pain and nothing to fear, his words were cut short as a fist abruptly crashed into his face. Victory in the match belonged to Runa, leaving Chinatu astonished by her newfound strength. Runa, however, credited the achievement to the unwavering support and efforts of her entire team. The judges declared Haruna the winner, yet Haruna herself admitted she genuinely longed for the chance to truly test her strength against her opponent. Haruna's request left the knights astonished. Not even the most powerful nations dared to provoke Captain Nero, whose reputation alone deterred even the bravest. The king himself refrained from defying her wishes, understanding the extent of her authority, which rivaled that of Prime Minister Joseph. Rumors swirled about a legendary duel with Dehachima, yet no one could recall ever witnessing Captain Nero unleash her true power. New rules for this match sprang from his imagination. Luna can employ any tricks she wishes and slip around in complete silence. Meanwhile, her opponent must remain rooted to the spot, unable to attack or even move a muscle. Curiosity rises about whether Haruna will manage to land even a single hit on her opponent. A warning reached Haruna. If she ever planned to quit, now was her chance. Nairu stood as a completely different breed of rival. Unlike Haruna, who persisted no matter what, Nairu possessed the terrifying ability to seize control in an instant and utterly overwhelm her opponent. The word yield held no meaning in her world. Even if surrender flickered through her mind, her overwhelming strength would render the idea pointless. Remember to express your gratitude to the teacher for all the care and attention given. The clash between Haruna and Captain Nerubigai unfolded with relentless intensity. Every move mirrored their determination, as the air crackled with energy from their fierce confrontation. I explained to Chinatu that Nero's fighting instincts were unlike anyone else's. With ease, she could single-handedly defeat even the Lord of Darkness. Hopefully, Haruna will get away with nothing more than a minor injury. Summoning her powers, Rune released a thick smoke from her eyes that quickly enveloped everything nearby in a dense, swirling shroud. Even if someone managed to pass through the mist, it posed no danger to people. With such a small radius, it could easily be dispersed without any risk. Still, Nero insisted on staying behind. Given that decision, there was no longer any way to influence the fox. With a flicker of dark energy, Haruna unleashed the poisonous incantation known as Misspell. Her intent remained coldly clear. She aimed to leave Nairu with nothing left to break. Haruna retrieved the throwing weapons crafted especially for her by Gen. Dark magic surged through the shells as Haruna charged them and hurled them straight at Never. Relentless assaults from Luna came at her from every direction. Infusing her stone spheres of dark magic with a potent poison, Luna also increases their weight. Her expert throwing technique allows every attack to land with pinpoint precision. At first, Narev decided against merging the spheres, opting instead to catch them bare-handed. Without warning, the spheres began to move on their own. Luna dispatches monsters up to the 5th level with effortless precision, passing the trial without any difficulty. Harunatsu found herself astonished by how much stronger Haruna had become. Del commented that she too possessed remarkable strength, especially since she had arrived in this world already at level 5. Meanwhile, Chinatu pointed out that unlike Del, she had previously been a level 4 cleric, and it seemed Haruna was now catching up to her. Determined not to fall behind, Chinatu resolved to give her utmost effort and reclaim her edge. In truth, there was nothing for her to worry about, as Haruna remained at level 3. Despite Haruna's love for sports, each practice session feels like an uphill battle. She pours all her determination into perfecting her magic instead, hoping to showcase her talents in real combat. Chinatu, her closest friend, understands this about her better than anyone. According to Azu, Haruna had always struggled greatly with her studies. Soon after, the bell rang, revealing that China stood out as a top student among those learning magic. This only reinforced Chinatsu's reputation as an exceptional student, a distinction she continued to uphold without fail. She confessed to eagerly awaiting the chance to share all her knowledge with her. Luna turned out to be far more powerful than she had ever anticipated, so she committed herself to teaching Chinatsu with utmost seriousness and dedication. Just as he was about to leave, Nero called out and stopped him. Today held special significance. Haruna and Chinatsu were meant to strengthen the bond of their friendship, so Nero invited everyone to stay at her place. In the end, it became necessary for everyone to head to her house, which led to them all spending the night at Neru's place. China and Zhu found themselves awestruck by the opulence of the mansion and the sheer number of servants bustling about. The lavish dinner presented to them left an equally deep impression. That evening, Nero invited Del over to her place to enjoy some fine wine together. Realization dawned on him. From the very beginning, her true intent had been to lure him over by any means, whether with the promise of dinner or a bottle of wine. Back in their days as adventurers, such encounters happened often, always followed by mourning regret. Nero also wished that Del would finally accept some measure of responsibility. Chinatsu's stats appeared just as she realized Haruna's capabilities during the fight. Her stamina stood impressively high, yet she lacked any abilities that could enhance this attribute. Despite her expertise in a range of skills, Chinatsu found herself unable to capitalize on her own endurance. He observed that her potential was remarkable, and she was now on the verge of reaching the 5th level. Dills and Nero shared drinks, savoring the camaraderie that reminded them of the good old days. Their hearts brimmed with pride and hope for the achievements awaiting their students. In this warm atmosphere, the 7th day of training came to a close. Neri awoke in the same bed as before. Both admitted their memories were blank. Since it had been ages since either of them had touched alcohol, they had no choice but to rely on the map for guidance. Suddenly, a knock echoed at the door. A maid entered the room to inform Lady Nairo that breakfast awaited her. Meanwhile, Del finished dressing and declared that he would slip out through the window. He reminded Neri to hurry up so they wouldn't be late or attract any unwanted attention. The suggestion of giving it another try was met with Neri's quiet response. She simply said she would think about it. Some time passed, and soon the entire crew stood prepared, ready in every detail for the expedition ahead, and confided in Del, admitting an inability to contain his excitement. As expected, she remained perfectly calm, untroubled by any hint of nerves. Curiosity gnawed at her as she realized no one had told her the location or any details of the expedition. Uncertainty lingered over just how far they truly intended to travel for this hunt. They confirmed that they had no knowledge of the matter. The group confidently stated that their destination lay ahead, a fortress nestled near the border of their homeland, the kingdom of Adelheit, and a neighboring state. News arrived that 2 bands of monsters had appeared nearby, each led by its own self-proclaimed Dark Lord. Until now, I believed there was only a single Dark Lord. Assurances were given that the emergence of 2 Dark Lords would not alter anything. She went on to explain that, according to their information, both Dark Lords were members of the Goblin and Orc races, specifically belonging to the higher subspecies known as the Goblin King and the Orc King. Other creatures, such as ogres or wild boars, often decide to join their groups. Familiarity with each other's existence has already developed, leading them to act together for now. Both humans and monsters play their own unique roles in the world. Wolf-type monsters, for example, serve as skilled hunters, and as their abilities improve, they gain the chance to evolve. Meanwhile, creatures such as goblins and orcs possess the intelligence to use tools, granting them access to a far broader range of activities and occupations. A vow resonated among the group, to face the enemy head-on and wipe out every last foe. Any monster crossing their path would be struck down without a moment's hesitation. Convinced that setting up camp right in the heart of the battlefield is the perfect plan, he feels certain of success. The kingdom of Adelheit has long maintained close relations with the western borderland nation of Zarni. The kingdom of Helgate, though modest in size, has long held renown for its mastery of magic and the creation of enchanted artifacts. This reputation has often attracted the attention of more powerful nations, eager to claim its secrets for themselves. Meanwhile, Zarnia sprawls across fertile plains, blessed with abundant grain harvests. Trade between these realms not only strengthens their ties, but also fuels their shared prosperity and growth. Olguide supplies Tazarnia with enchanted items alongside essential provisions. Their involvement extends further as they coordinate joint training sessions for knights and warriors and foster the exchange of valuable knowledge and expertise. The heroes pressed onward, pausing only occasionally for brief rests and quick snacks. Munu took on the responsibility of cooking, but in the end, the dish turned out so poorly that calling it food would have been generous. Hari swiftly calculated the amount of food that could be used for the day, carefully considering all the supplies on hand. That night, Naru and Chinatu discovered Haruna fast asleep next to Dels. Dels offered an explanation for the situation, but the girls hesitated, uncertain whether to trust her words. The memory of Haruna sleeping beside her last night drifted into Dels's mind. She shared with Nero how, in the past, she would always drift off to sleep with her dog held tightly in her arms, finding true happiness in those quiet moments. Now, those gentle memories lingered, bringing her comfort. Realizing she had no power to alter the situation, she offered Della a gentle warning to avoid actions that might cause further misunderstanding. With that, the 8th day of training quietly drew to a close. Relief washed over Bruno as they finally reached their destination. He always set out to meet the garrison unit, never hesitating to step forward at their approach. Janet awaited them at the entrance, a steadfast commander of the fortress and Raya's mentor. With calm authority, she oversaw the stronghold's defenses facing toward Tuzarnia. Without hesitation, she announced her intention to fight alone, refusing any offers of assistance. Every challenge ahead, she and her team would overcome on their own. She introduced her companion, The encounter with Dell, known throughout the underworld as Black Steel and presumed to have retired, caught her off guard. Even more surprising was discovering that Janet had been aware of his reappearance all along. Janet felt certain that they were more than capable of handling things on their own. The creature began to recount the unfolding situation. Two factions continued recruiting goblins and orcs along the road, steadily advancing from both the north and south, while their numbers swelled. Based on gathered intelligence, the subordinates referred to their leaders as Lords of Darkness. Both groups spoke in broken language, their intelligence leaving much to be desired. Further investigation revealed that the invaders' primary goal was to locate a place suitable for establishing a nest and breeding. The local inhabitants had already been evacuated. Once Nara finished explaining, the group set off to organize their camp. Eager to test their abilities, they decided to put their skills to the test. Smoke curling through the sky signaled human presence, while the savory aroma of roasting meat served as a powerful lure for monsters. In effect, Neru was deliberately drawing these creatures toward the camp. This clever strategy ensured their supplies would be replenished, reduced the threat to the fortress and nearby villages, and brought their enemies directly to their doorstep. Surprise flickered in my mind at how quickly Nari devised a plan. In the past, she would have simply charged straight into the fray without a second thought. The task of dividing responsibilities fell to him. Nero was assigned to hold back the advancing Orc King's army from the south, while Haruna and Chinatu prepared to confront the Goblin King's forces approaching from the north. Bells would accompany them, serving as their protector. Keenan and Daganov would remain at the camp to oversee all the necessary preparations. She promised to bring them wild boar carcasses, leaving them only the task of preparing the meat. Excitement sparked among the girls as their energy grew, and they stood ready to begin their tasks. The cells began to explain to the girls that goblins were a demonic branch of humanity, renowned for the distinctive qualities of their flesh. Green skin and childlike stature make them easy to recognize. Goblins possess less strength than the average person, show little intelligence, and rarely see old age. Yet their extraordinary ability to multiply prevents even the most relentless hunters from wiping them out, no matter how many chase after them day and night. The astonishing fertility of goblins lies at the root of the problem. In a single birth, they produce a multitude of offspring, and their pregnancies last only a short time. This rapid reproduction means that goblins, usually noticed by only a handful of villagers, quickly evolve into a significant headache for adventurers. Among them, the fourth-level Goblin King commands immediate attention. A crown rests atop his head, and a flowing cloak marks his authority. Though his speech comes in broken phrases, he manages to communicate his thoughts. After uncovering new details, the group chose a different path forward. The entire group watched in amazement at the skillful and precise way Kep and Nero moved about the kitchen. Chinatu admitted her surprise, confessing she never expected such expertise from her own teacher. Dell chuckled at this, teasing that Nero actually held the title for most experienced cook among them, since she had always been the one to prepare meals during their travels. Reading had drained Aruna, and suddenly she blurted out her strong desire to have them. After announcing that it was time to stop, he wondered aloud if such a decision might be too hasty. They had only just met the day before, after all. Perhaps Haruna sensed as well that there was a risk he might be luring her into a trap. Meanwhile, the Goblin King drew ever closer to the camp of our heroes. The goblins cleverly employed decoys to mask the true size of their army. While some dismiss them as nothing more than a band of monsters, their true power is overwhelming enough to wipe an entire nation off the map. At last, the Goblin King summoned the fabled goblin hero. A moment of hesitation slowed his advance, as thoughts swirled around the human camp stationed ahead. The place reeked of possible traps or a hidden ambush. Uncertainty lingered over his next move, yet the goblin hero stepped forward with assurance, calming the king's worries. There was, he insisted, nothing to fear. Even if the humans doubted the news brought to them, it would not deter their actions. Only a legendary figure like Captain Nero might have posed a genuine threat to their plans. In that case, the goblin hero would have no choice but to enter the fray. The king showed clear displeasure with this decision. He pointed out that the hero would not rush into battle. Orcs would advance from the south, and even if some people remained, they could be trapped in a pincer maneuver. The Goblin King wrestles with the need for strategic thinking. A solemn apology is offered to the hero. The Goblin hero suggested at least casting a glance in their direction. With this, the squad would proceed as planned and confront the humans. Understanding the situation, the king quickly issued the necessary orders. While many believe goblins and orcs are locked in conflict, reality tells a different story. These two groups joined forces to seize the border fortress and strengthen their army. Driven by this goal, the hero trained the goblins and formed an alliance with the orcs. The Goblin King announced that they had managed to spot 3 enemies in the vicinity. The Goblin hero speculated that Captain Nero was likely among the humans. The sight of her severed head would have instantly shattered the enemy's morale, leaving them utterly demoralized. Upon receiving the command to charge into battle with every ounce of strength, this red-skinned goblin distinguished himself from the rest. He earned a place in history as the first goblin to claim the title of hero and reach the 6th level. The others soon began to call him the Goblin Hero. The sheer number of goblins caught her off guard, yet a sense of delight stirred within her at the sight. Rumor had it their equipment was quite decent, yet not a single complaint about theft had ever surfaced. Apparently, the goblins possessed a skilled blacksmith of their own. Nerves danced within her as the moment approached, for this was her very first battle. She assured everyone that her abilities and stats far surpassed Haruna's, leaving her completely unafraid of an ordinary goblin. Surrounded by countless enemies, Chinatu always found steadfast support in a loyal friend who stood by her side and offered unwavering strength in every battle. Gratitude filled her words as she thanked Del, admitting she felt much better. The magic of radiant renewal soothed her mind and brought balance to her emotions with every gentle touch. In stark contrast, the magic of darkness inflicted only deep suffering. Encouragement filled Haruna as he assured her that she would certainly reach the 4th level today. However, he urged her to treat this not as a game, but as a serious battle, asking her to give it her all and stay fully focused. Brimming with newfound energy, he stood completely prepared for the coming battle. During the battle, Del cast support spells to activate Regeneration and Second Wind. The Regeneration spell allowed its targets to heal themselves automatically, and could be learned upon reaching the 40th level of light magic. Second Wind, accessible at the 80th level of light magic, protected its recipients from harmful status effects. Without hesitation, she launched the first strike, releasing a poisonous mist that drifted straight toward the goblin. Wasting no time, the goblin immediately responded, summoning the power of light magic to his aid. The spear spell emerges as a powerful combat incantation, unlocked upon reaching level 50 in light magic. In your wake, nothing living will remain. With a spark of excitement, she declared how incredible it all was. Now, it was her turn to showcase what she could do. Reaching into her bag, the girl pulled out a throwing ball. Summoning every ounce of strength, she hurled the ball at the goblin with all her might. The ball struck its mark, and in an instant, flashes began erupting all around. Astonishment filled him as he watched Haruna dispatch so many goblins with a single effortless throw. Noticing the dwindling supply of ammunition, she made up her mind to push forward to the front lines and scavenge for any usable shells. She raised her staff and began to wave it through the air. Archers drew their bows toward her, yet Chinatu swiftly moved to shield her from harm. Suddenly, an ogre emerged. Chinatu stood her ground, unflinching and ready to fight back at a moment's notice. With a gleaming spear in hand, she lunges forward, swift and determined, yet the ogres nimbly dodge each of her attacks. In Dublin, the hero noticed bursts of bright magic and deduced that among the people was a captain named Nero. Yet none of them possessed the ability to bolster her magic in any way. The king announced that 3 ogres had fallen, cut down in the heat of close combat. Only he managed to claim that weapon, making him the one destined to slay Captain Nero. As for the others, let the king decide their fate. Remarkably, Chinatu managed to defeat 3 ogres single-handedly. Meanwhile, a hero appeared on the battlefield and turned to Haruna, asking if she was Captain Nero. Haruna shook her head, denying the claim, and gently clarified that she was not the one he sought. The hero realized that her plan centered on denying any connection to Captain Nero. Never before had he encountered goblins of this kind. With quiet determination, she assured everyone that she could handle him alone and asked the others to leave him to her. The Dublin hero commanded his warriors to head straight for the rally point, eliminating anyone who crossed their path. Their orders were clear: advance relentlessly, never pausing for even an instant. With a quick glance at his status screen, the hero revealed his abilities. Only 12 years old, yet his supplementary stats radiated impressive strength. Mastery of fire magic and swordsmanship had already reached their peak, each skill perfected to 100%.